he was like a 10 adult over my This is City Council Monday, November 13th, 2023. Roll call, please.
Mayor McGrath.
Here.
Tracy Snyder.
Here.
Jen Mazias.
Here.
Tom Nernest.
Here.
Dave Anderson.
Here.
John Hopkins.
Here.
Jared Trimble.
Here.
All present. Quorum is met.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask everyone to please pull your microphones a little bit closer so people online can hear. Next is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, our next item is approval of minutes from the October 9th council meeting and board of review from October 16th.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second that.
Okay, motion by Tom, second by Jared. Any questions, comments, or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is approval of monthly expenditures.
I'll make that motion.
Second. Motion by Tom, second by Jen. Roll call vote, please.
Jared Trimble.
Yes.
John Hopkins.
Yes.
Dave Anderson.
Yes.
Tom Nernest.
Yes.
Jen Mazias.
Yes.
Tracy Snyder.
Yes.
Mayor McGrath.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next item is public comment. Is there anyone here who wishes to give public comment? Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Karen Novacek. I reside at 610 East 4th Street. You may remember that I am chairing the Ad Hoc Beautification Committee. The committee has met on 3 occasions. We are meeting twice a month. And I come before you this evening to let you know that we are in the process of developing a survey that will be available online for citizens to weigh in on a variety of questions about comments about beautification on Bayfield Street. We're working with Northland College to finalize that survey, and the instructor, Dr. Noel Foster, will be compiling the information. We're hoping that that survey will be available within the next 10 days and will be available for a 30-day comment period with results available in January. Our plan is that in March of 2024, we will also have a community meeting to enable the persons in our community to hear the results of that survey and to give us some additional input in terms of beautification on Bayfield Street. We are just at a preliminary stage at this point, so we're gathering more information. We have met with our consulting engineer last week to get some information. We did a walk around in the rain and probably a little snow, right, Tracy? But it's very interesting to walk Bayfield Street and not drive Bayfield Street. You see things that you did not understand or did not even know were there. So I will keep you updated and bring you more information as we progress. But again, at this point, the survey probably in the next 10 days, and it'll be online and on the city website and on the city page for input. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Karen. Anyone else here for public comment?
Good evening, everyone. I am Paul Boulanger. I'm not a formal Washburn resident, but I own a business here in town. I own a South Shrubbery Tap House. You guys always got a full building of things to discuss. One of the items that you have tonight is the extension of the agreement with the Badger Brewing Company. Want to bring sort of my side of the picture to it. I think I'm not going to be kind of outwardly against the project, but you can see the competition factor might be part of my kind of process thinking. But you should be well aware that in this year, the legislation has been proposed to the state of reforming the liquor laws of our state. Prior to the liquor laws, brewery is not able to have a liquor license. The Assembly bill was passed 92-4. And the Senate is now hearing it before the session closes this year. We anticipate those of the liquor laws will be changed, which would allow my brewery to have a liquor license. So in those kind of regards, as I look at you and you've been able to put this project off for more than a few years, that I would be willing to basically, so I'd have an interest in that liquor license more than just theoretical interest in it. I would definitely be a business that's already established, has a clientele, has the financial wares and means right now to basically go forward with a project to upgrade where I am right now as just a brew pub. So I don't know what the extenuating factors on the agreement are or what the council would see as good cause to extend that agreement. But seriously, folks, there's a lot of businesses in town that do a lot of things on a day-to-day basis that have shown financial hardships and gone through financial hardships and shown financial, prosperity because of all those kind of things that they do. So I think you're just extending something that's not a viable kind of reality if you basically give the extension to the project. Okay, that's where I'm at.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else here for public comment this evening?
Jewel Pickard. I'm at 17 East 3rd Street in Washburn. I have a couple things. First of all, I just want to commend the entire city council and administrators for your thought and thoughtfulness on working on the Bayfield Street reconstruction project. From the meetings that I have gone to, there have been a lot of details on that, and I really appreciate the fact that you're going through it in a methodical fashion for the city. So that's the first one. The second item has to do with the proclamation that was, for last month. I'm not in favor of Columbus Day being erased, so to speak, because Indigenous Peoples Day was put on that day, and I think it should have been on a different day as opposed to kind of erasing the history that we have with Christopher Columbus. And within that proclamation, there were a couple of terms that kind of bothered me. One was systemic racism. There's no evidence or proof of that, and it just seems to be a term that's bandied about quite frequently without any reason for its being there. And the second item was racial equity, which is a Marxist construct really to have redistribution of the wealth according to a person's identity group. And that's contrary to the Constitution, which of course talks about equal opportunity for all U.S. citizens. So I'm kind of puzzled why we even need to use those terms in any proclamation or anything within the city. So thank you.
Anyone else here for public comment this evening?
Hello, I'm Jacob Kaiser. I'm here as my capacity as the Executive Director for Recreation and Fitness Resources, and we operate North Coast Community Sailing here in Washburn. I wanted to voice my concerns about the proposed ordinance that you guys have, just in its language being very vague as it relates to the programs that we operate here, and hopefully that it will be taken a look at, because depending on how you read it, it would prohibit us from being a part of Washburn, and that is very concerning to us. The intention of it is a separate discussion, and I'll leave that to you guys. But North Coast Community Sailing has been a vital part of the community now for 25 years. We bring economic revenue into the town through a lot of people coming from outside of Washburn, people coming in, as well as really promoting silent sports and bringing up the next generation of youth here in the community. And so I really want to make sure that anything that gets proposed takes a look at not everybody that would be affected, not just the intended purpose of the ordinance as such. And so, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jacob. Anyone else for public comment?
Hi, my name is Roth Edwards, and I reside with my family at 221 West 6th Street, Washburn. And also, I want to extend my commendation to my council representative, Tom Ninas, and the council as a whole for all your hard work, attention, and essentially, I think, very good work on the Bayfield Street project. That said, I also want to comment on the proposed ordinance. And I've written a few words which I'll share with you. At its highest development, representative government is that form which best enables a free people to govern themselves, said President Woodrow Wilson. Tonight, representing myself, I ask my council representative, Tom Ninas, and the council as a whole to consider whether your vote tonight indeed represents the highest development of representative government. Remember, in a truly representative democracy, elected representatives are responsible to the electorate. For a few on the council and the Parks Board, the proposed luxury camping project seemingly represents an acceptable compromise. It's the lesser of two evils, as one Parks Board member described the proposal. But commercializing public land directly above the trailhead of the walking trail, our people's path, sets a precedent that's unacceptable to many Washburn residents. Before casting a vote and setting that precedent, you each can ask what you truly wish for Washburn's lakefront and its emblematic trail. Because of the financial, environmental, and political costs involved in placing luxury camping in that particular location, the decision you make tonight will have a decades-long effect on our city. Whether the effect would be positive or negative, it's a question we've debated long enough. We can disagree. However, I trust that you agree that in a representative democracy, your job tonight remains to follow the majority will of the people of Washburn. Regarding the best of Washburn's natural resources, the lakefront property, I simply ask that the consensus voice carry the day. Again, in a truly representative democracy, the elected representatives are responsible to the electorate.
Thanks, Rob. Anyone else here for public comment tonight? Anyone online for public comment? No? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on. Next item is mayoral announcements, proclamations, and appointments. And you will all be relieved to know that I have none of the above. So we will move on to discussion and action on recommendation to approve conditional use permit application for Schwamigan Bay Boat LLC for heavy vehicle sales and service at 706 West Bayfield Street. Robert B. Hartzell, the second petitioner.
I would make a motion to approve the conditional use permit for Schwamigan Bay Boats at 706 West Bayfield Street.
I'll second that.
Motion by Dave, second by Tom. Are there questions, comments, or discussion?
I guess my one question would be, so the planning commission unanimously approved this, but there was one public comment.
Yes.
And when I was reading over it, it seemed like, did that come like after, like how did that work out? Because I couldn't tell like if it was taken into consideration when they were looking at any
Sure.
mitigation strategies, or because that seemed weird. So I just
Sure.
want to hear a little bit about the public comment.
Do you want to respond, Scott, or do you want me to respond? Okay.
So it is correct that we did have a lengthy public comment on that particular item. What is difficult to remind everyone that conditional uses are something now that really our hands are tied. It's a very limited scope of action that the Planning Commission or the council can take regarding concerns about it. You essentially have to prove that those concerns are happening. You cannot anticipate problems and take action on that. And so that threshold of where what you can do and what you can't do is very limited. If we would go down through time here and things aren't working out or problems develop, then we can go back and take action on that. But you cannot essentially proactively anticipate what you think might happen. You have to be able to prove it. So the legislature has really changed how we have to treat conditional uses. In the future, I'd like to try to eliminate as many conditional use opportunities we have, because they're very difficult to deal with, and they kind of let the public think that, oh, well, if I complain, then we can just do something. Well, that is not how it works anymore. The legislature did this because they're trying to limit subjective zoning decisions. You have to prove that there is in fact a problem, and that has not been done.
Okay, understood. The criteria was met, and then, but Ms. Collins spoke after the votes were after.
No, it was during the discussion.
It was during the discussion. Okay, because the main concern seemed, I mean, you probably have those concerns with all sorts of businesses, right?
Right.
Like,
And they did seem very cordial, and that they would be following up with each other.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so she had an opportunity to express her concern before the vote happened.
Okay, then my second question is, just in general, when I think about like this use, you know, we can't cover every use in our zoning code. So was it in particular like the boat, like, why did it need a conditional use permit? That particular like selling of boats lot, or was it because, like, just give me the skinny on why it was a conditional use permit and why it was something that wasn't allowed by our code?
So in discussions with the petitioner, we looked at exactly what he was planning and doing. We went through the code to see what fits best, what definition works. At first, I was thinking something else, but when we got into the specific rental of boats, we have a definition that this particular definition, heavy equipment use and sales, specifically discusses the rental of boats. And so that was the category that it has been classified as.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we have a motion by Dave, second by Tom. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, our next item is discussion and referral of request to vacate the unopened Triton Avenue between Grandview Boulevard and Sunrise Avenue. Darren and Tara Miller petitioners. And I believe you are here tonight. If anyone has any questions on this. So this is tab 2 of your packet. So when I was reviewing this item, and I don't know if we need to start with a motion on this. Technically, I think we should. If anyone has a motion they'd like to put forward on this.
I'll make a motion to approve.
A second motion to approve by Tom, second by Tracy.
The motion really is to
Oh,
approve this.
right.
Oh, that's right.
Sure. So not approve the final approval, but to move on to the plan. Okay. So when I was looking at that diagram with the zoning districts where that little U-shaped trail was planned for, my question to Scott was, would we be able to ask for perhaps a recreational easement on the property if that's something we want to continue to plan for? Or another alternative would be theoretically, if that trail were to ever come into being, could it be moved down, a street so that it's on an actual street instead of on this vacated street? So I'm just putting that out there as a point for discussion. I don't know if anyone has any other thoughts on that.
Wasn't this originally, the Triton Avenue originally designed to be a future trail?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So if we don't request there to be a recreational easement, then that would change.
Is it possible we can get a recreational easement?
It is possible. But it's not guaranteed. Yes, that's all up for negotiation or consideration.
So,
Yes, be requested.
Go ahead, Tracy.
Well, I was looking at the map with Scott, and I guess the big thing is you could move it down.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not that big of a deal to move it
Sure.
down and get the other street that's already.
Right. It would just be slightly smaller of a U.
Right.
Yeah.
It's more loop, so I don't think it's a big deal.
I don't.
I really don't.
Jen?
I'm probably gonna be a broken record tonight, and I just feel like, again, just thinking of Like when we plan things out and we look at things for like, I mean, there's probably a lot of vacated things like this that people don't want next to their homes, right? Like, I feel like we continue to do these things and we don't look at like the future of how we want Washburn to grow and where we want things. These things are gonna keep coming up. And so I just keep asking us to like, look at our future goals and objectives and why we have things in place and like the unforeseen circumstances and things that happen when we continue to do these things. I mean, it's not a big deal until you move it and then, you know, like it just continues. And I also think like this whole area up here is, if you look at all the other parcels, right? I guess I just don't. I just think the land was plotted out in a certain way for a certain reason. And I don't think that reason has changed. And so I just cautionary tale of continuing to do these kind of things. I don't know, Scott, do you have any thoughts of like future, like, I mean, I get that it might be smaller, but then there or also have like all sorts of like, I mean, purpose of some of these too are for like alleys and access, future access. Then you go to do like land divisions, right? Like all sorts of reasons, right? Like that's why cities are plotted out. Okay, that makes sense. Have an answer.
So on the issue of the vacatings in that area, so the DuPont Park subdivision was platted back in 1918 or thereabouts. And it was platted based on the predominant style of land development that existed at that time, which was very small lots with the alleys dividing in between. The city, as I recall, didn't allow or had that property, didn't allow development in there until somewhere in the late 60s or 70s or so when it decided to open that up for development. Unfortunately, what happened at the time is they did not replat that land to more modern subdivision plat for appropriate lots for what was envisioned. And so what has happened over the years is we have vacated so many alleys and streets in that area. We have a hodgepodge of large lots, sparse development, and so forth, based on essentially a house or two per platted block. So we can't go back and fix that anymore. That ship has sailed. So we're stuck with just I'll say just bad planning there from decades ago. Okay, so right now we have there's only a handful of streets that have not been vacated in that area. Triton is one of those, and then the street immediately to the south, Mountain View and Highland are the ones that have not been, they're not opened, but they have not been vacated in any way. So it is possible to do a through street or a through trail through any of those locations. The old zoning map, and this far predates me, there was a plan some time ago to create a recreational trail, essentially creating a large U in that area using Sunrise, Sunset, and Triton Avenue. It could be a ski trail, snowshoe trail, walking trail, something of that nature going through that area. That plan had been on the books for many years, but nothing ever happened with it because it was just kind of a dead end. It didn't really lead anywhere or go anywhere. And so it never really had much interest. Plus, we haven't had any funding to do anything with it either, so it's just kind of sat there as an unused plan. Until the Millers have come along and they wanted to put up a garage, I believe, on that Street. And we are looking at the proposed housing development over near the nursing home area, which could potentially have trails through that property that could then link into that area. And with the plans that we've been working on to extend walking trail through the athletic field area and potentially onto with the Superior Avenue of the right-of-way that we obtained in that area a year or two ago. We have the potential to link some sort of trail system over that way now. So you could have it go down a different street. Do the property owners in that neighborhood, are they aware of this? Probably not. Would a recreational easement, say 10 feet down the middle of Triton Avenue, so we'd be maintaining 5 feet from the center line of that proposed street, would that be satisfactory to the Millers and to the property owners to the north? I don't know. They'll have to answer that question. So those are the options. So if it's something that you want to still have on the books and pursue, then we need to have some sort of pathway going through there. If you don't believe that this trail is ever going to happen and you don't want to think about it anymore, then you can be done with it and forget about it. So that's really your choice.
And either way, we don't need to decide that tonight, correct? This is just to get a general sense of whether council is in favor of the concept, letting the details get worked out in the process. Or
you could do that. You can refer to the plan commission and tell them that's your opinion, because this will come back to council at some point. Or you can say, no, this is what we'd like to do, and this is how we'd like to see this happen, and provide that direction as well. Go either way.
Okay. Does anyone else have any thoughts they'd like to share? Questions, comments? So at this time, the motion is to approve the concept to go forward for further going through the process. Yes. We have a motion by Tom and a second by Tracy. So unless I see any further questions.
I'd be happy if we had that easement into that, then send it to planning commission.
Are you saying you'd like to amend your motion?
I want to see an easement in there, because scenario goes through, there's gonna have to be some recreational trails so people can walk up and down or ski down or whatever, bike zone, and 10 feet should be fine.
So you're amending your motion?
Right, to include that.
Would you be open to that amendment as a second or not so much?
I think it's restricting. I think that we're really just deciding to move this forward, and the planning commission can.
You're more comfortable
with it a little more,
working out the details.
working out the details. Yeah. So I would.
So how do we do an amendment, but then not a second to the amendment? So
That would be,
Like
the
that.
original motion is still on the table.
Okay. Okay, so there's
That's
not a
fine,
second to
that's
the
fine.
amendment, so we'll stick with the original motion.
I'd rather give the planning commission, personally for me, I'm not ready just to not think that we don't want a trail here in the future and just moving it to another issue where the other landowners didn't even get it, they might not understand the whole situation. So I just feel like there's needs to be some more investigation and work in terms of future trail opportunity. And
So you did not want to second the amendment? Oh, no.
no, it's not me. I'm just saying, like, you guys, we can call the order, we can call a vote. I'm fine. I'm just saying,
Sure.
like, it's fine.
Okay, and then we can always have another motion if that doesn't pass or something.
Sure.
All right. So we're gonna go ahead with the original motion that's on the table and has been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, now the motion passes and duly noted for conversation going forward that the details will need to get worked out. But the first green light has been given, the first of a series. Okay, moving on then to our next item. It's discussion and action on proposed certified survey map in the northeast corner of State Highway 13 and Williamson Road. Mark Stinton, petitioner. This is in tab 3 of your packets. And this is just approving the proposed survey map.
So moved.
Motion by Mary, second by Tom. Any questions, comments, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, discussion and action on proposed certified survey map in block 3 of L.N. Clausen's edition, 1101 North Washington Avenue, Kristen Bob petitioner. This is tab 4 of your packet. And I believe Scott has gotten some information since the packet went out. So I'm going to turn that over to him to share with us as far as the expenses that are referred to, the cost estimates.
So I have been in contact with the petitioner regarding this request, and I have no objection to the certified survey map that's before you. That part of it is fine. The issue that the property owner will have is she's right on the service boundary for water and sewer utilities. Her block, her house is served by water and sewer. And per ordinance, any other development on that block would then also need to connect to water and sewer. However, that would require utility main extensions in order to service those areas. The engineering estimate that I had received, there are two potential directions and options, really make it financially not feasible for that to happen. It was between $600,000 and $450,000 in order to do that. So, and that is just the unfortunate reality of the cost of putting utilities in. So the property can be divided off, but it really cannot be developed until there's a way to find a way to lower that cost, or there would be additional properties in that area that would seek to be developed, and you could share the cost through special assessment over with many properties in order to reduce that cost per property.
So my question is, if council approves the survey map, does that mean it is that they would adopt it? You know, or so she does want to do this division regardless of whether or not that property will be developed.
It will be her option. It could be further subdivided at some point in the future. Part of it is not going to make a difference, but whenever the transfer of this property would come to us, I would be noting on back with the title company that utility connections would be required, and that would be specially assessed. So we would not issue a building permit for this until the issue is addressed.
Okay, and there's no other options?
I see no options at this point. We have that ordinance in place because the city accepted federal funding back in the early 2000s for utility work that occurred. And that stipulation, that ordinance was a requirement of that funding. It is designed to require more people to connect to our system to increase revenue to pay for those expenses. And it's just unfortunate with the location where she is at and the limited, and the extension and the limited number of people that could, you'd have to divide the property. And she could potentially divide that lot into 6 separate buildable lots. Then there's school property on the other side, which is currently vacant. If that could be developed, you could add a whole number more lots. There's property to the north that could be further subdivided, and you could add a whole nother series of buildable lots. If ever all those things came together, it would move the costs into a range that would be affordable to do. But doing it just for one lot, no.
Okay. And lot 1, that has water and sewer facilities on it, like that's shown on the map?
Lot 1, yes, she is connected. That is your house.
It's that much, just a, okay. Okay, thanks.
So, is there a motion on approval of the proposed certified survey map?
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion by Mary, second by Tracy. Didn't I spell your name wrong? I'll fix that. These are all my own. Any other questions, comments, or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is discussion and action on good cause extension to development agreement with the Brewing Badger LLC. This is tab 5 of your packet.
Evening, everybody. I'm Badger Kolish. I think you all kind of know me by now. And I'm here on behalf of the Brewing Badger LLC and Lost Apostle Brewing. I'm a resident of the town of Washburn. So basically, we are asking for a 12-month extension, good cause extension for our agreement. And let you know where we're all at right now is kind of hard to move the project forward when you don't have your pricing set from your architect until October 16th. So just, it hasn't even been a month yet. We have our pricing set in hand now, and we're moving forward. Basically, the next steps for us are price review with our GC, and then we are pulling certain items off of the GC's plate to bid out locally. And I'm waiting on bids to come back from local excavators, contractors. And from there, we move forward as fast as we can move forward. You'll in fact see the GC and myself on site tomorrow putting down our insulated concrete blankets for frost protection to foundations and the ground itself. So we can start as soon as we can, it's feasible to start. So that's where we're at, what we're up to.
I want to thank you, Badger, for just being very open anytime we have questions regarding where we are in the process. I just want council to know that that has been an ongoing conversation, even though it's not something that gets talked about regularly with everyone. I'm in frequent communication with Badger, and Scott is also at times. And obviously it's exciting to see that the building came down. And everyone's wondering what's next.
That's kind of what's next.
And so my understanding is that the bank has required additional items, and one of those things couldn't be determined until you had that pricing from.
Yeah, basically, this is a project of pretty significant scope, I would say, and we can't move that forward on estimates. So we need firm bids in place. And then we go back and we, of course, try and reduce our costs and see what the best package is. And there's a lot of moving pieces to that puzzle. And that's what I've been working with Chippewa Valley Bank to get all the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle in place so we can come to an agreement.
Is there any question from the bank that there would not be all the pieces in place?
You know, I don't think so, because, well, we brought adequate funding, and we certainly have been, we've gotten our grants, et cetera. So why don't I let Matt address where we stand with the bank?
Sure. The bank man.
There we go.
No, not when the item is his. Go ahead, Matt, hi.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
So just, is there any question that the bank wouldn't have what it needs once it gets those numbers and
No.
things match up?
I'm optimistic this is gonna happen. It is a viable project. There are a lot of moving pieces, as Badger said, with regard to I think they counted 7 or 8 funding sources, you know, and so, and each and every one of those has a different set of guidelines and rules, including the bank and SBA. But it is all coming together now that, as Badger mentioned, some of the things we've been waiting for are here. And so no, I don't foresee anything stalling this thing out.
It seems like the bank maybe has asked for some additional information.
Which we have received.
Sure. But that's just so that everyone understands, you know, the information has been given and then the bank has asked for more. And so it's been a little bit stretched out for some of those reasons as well.
It has taken longer than anybody expected, for sure. But it is going. Badger and Amy are all in on this. The bank is in on this. We are supportive, and we want to make sure it goes through. Don't really have any reason to believe that it won't.
All right. Anyone have any questions for Matt or Badger?
I have a question for Matt. Not Matt, but Badger.
Oh, for Badger.
This comes from my constituents. They wanting to know if you have signed contract with a date when your contractors are going to start.
No, absolutely not. Until I have final costing, I will not have a signed contract. So that's where we're at.
That's what they want to know.
And like I mentioned prior, this is the part where I'm trying to take things off of the GC's plate in order to keep them local. I'm using Donald Home Construction at present from Duluth because I've done other brewery projects with them, and I need them for some of these aspects. But the things that I don't need them for, I want to keep as local as I can. So that's where we're at.
Speaking of that, and I'm sure you've gotten bids, I mean, I know, like from a perspective of trying to get people to do work, everybody's super busy. And so when I see like the intention is to do stuff this winter, and we don't have signed contracts, like I'm just like, I guess with the folks that you are working with to get bids, I've seen how this goes. Like, how is those conversations going that they're gonna have availability? Because if we're gonna try to make up time this winter, I just am very leery of, I just know how hard it is. Everybody is so busy. So I appreciate using local contractors, but in the same instance, I know how hard it is to actually get people to come, because people are just busy, right? And so when you try to get something done on your house, they're like, yep, we're gonna see you next fall, right? And so it's just really difficult right now. So I guess I just want to hear you like discuss that about your winter intention.
Yeah, so where we're at is I put bids out to about 5 places, but I won't get bids back from 5 because the ones that couldn't do it bowed out. So I'm waiting on 7, like 3 left, so. So all I can do is trust their availability. That's what they tell me, otherwise they wouldn't bid on it. And so what we've done is we've made everybody do a winter bid, you know.
So it is, so your bids are for like doing work?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to
Again,
make
we have
sure.
to see those costs come back and go, okay. But that's the purpose of blanketing the site as well. So blanket it and then you can start as soon as you can start. If you have to move snow, you move snow. But the ground will freeze and roll the foundations.
I have one more question. Have you heard anything on your state permit?
For the build, yeah, it's about a 3-day turnaround according to our architect. So we haven't submitted it yet in case there are any last minute changes.
Dave?
I would just like to make a motion, if we can, to approve the good cause extension to develop the agreement with Brewing Badger.
Motion by Dave to extend for good cause.
Second.
Second by Mary. Any more questions or discussion?
I guess the important thing is to have, communication updates on, for Scott. I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces and, you know, some of the moving pieces could not move. And I think it's really important to have an understanding that if there's going to be a delay, that you would communicate that as soon as possible with our city administrator.
Yeah, sure. And Scott's been free to reach out and has on occasion when folks have inquired, so I think we've had pretty decent rapport there. But, and again, I'm available anytime, and I'm as transparent as it gets. But yeah, I have no problem at all. As soon as I have a start date, I'd love to share it. And we hope to do that on social because we have about 1,200 people following us and wanting us to go through. So it's, yeah, by all means, I'm all about sharing it as soon as I know.
And then are you talking about like getting monthly or regular updates on the
I
process?
guess it would be, you know, a clear, you know, to just say every month I'll check in and give Scott an update.
Yeah, I don't think that's an issue. I mean, and I don't, once we're rolling here, I honestly don't think it's going to be even required. I think it'll be transparent enough that you're going to see for yourselves. But I have no problem touching base. And by all means, reach out. I'm easily found, so don't hesitate.
And then Max, did you have a question?
Yeah, just for information purposes, similar to that. So this came back to the council last September, October, where you had an extension for good cause for the demolition timeline. Council found good cause, give you an extra, I believe that was 6 months for demolition. But at that time, you specifically said you didn't think you needed an extension to this deadline, because we were thinking of extending them both at the same time. What changed between last October and now, whereas you didn't need it then, but you need it now?
Not having our architectural drawings done, not having our price set. It's all the engineering, honestly. And it's really not the architects, but it gets subbed out to an engineering firm, and that took longer than any of us anticipated.
Okay, so
I
just,
truthfully expected to have our materials back in July, and here we are, October 16th. So that's what changed for me.
and I guess just to clarify there, it's not based on the feasibility of the project or anything else that
No.
has changed in that time?
No, the project is great.
Thank you for answering that. Anyone else? Mary?
I'm not looking for another one of these to come forward.
Me neither, Mary.
Right.
Not at all.
And to that note too, I will add that when we negotiated this contract and working with Badger and with council, we did build in the 12-month extension to this deadline.
Correct.
There is not another built-in extension. This one, we specifically said, okay, Badger, if you're showing good faith work and you show good cause for an extension, city will grant that this time. But there is not another built-in extension. So council can be assured of that. It's not something that can be dragged on in perpetuity. This is the one 12-month extension that was negotiated and agreed upon at the outset.
All right, any other questions?
So the build isn't completed by December 31st, but it's partially built, everything goes back to the city.
Yes, there's still always discretion, or the council can change, and we can enter into an amendment at any time. But as the contract stands right now, if it's not open for business by December 31 of if we get this extension of 2024, the property transfers back to the city. It is currently. That was like, if you grant this extension, then it's 2024.
Yeah, to be clear, from my perspective, there's been no risk to the city. I just don't see any risk to you at all.
What's your realistic estimate of when you think you might be done, even though it technically wouldn't have to be done until
I'm
December?
told, the GC tells me the project's about a 6-month build.
Okay.
Most things that cause delays, in my experience with building breweries, which I have done plenty of at this point, is most of the delays are caused by the peripheral items related to brewery. That's what I do. So I'm as long as the GC structural is good, I'm not going to slow it down.
So we could see a summer opening potentially.
I'm hopeful. I'd love to see the ball as much of the season as I can get it. That's what we're after.
Okay, Tom?
Are you gonna put sand in that hole to protect your neighbor basement?
I just told you we're blanketing the site. That's the frost protection.
That's gonna protect him
That
if it
protects
rains?
the foundation, that protects, that's the purpose of it.
And you're in communication with them, I would imagine.
Not recently, but I don't know that we've been out of communication.
One more question, speaking of the neighbors, is there a plan for what's going to happen to the exterior? What is now the exterior of their building? Had you worked out anything with them, taking that building down exposed, that kind of weird dotted?
Yeah, that's, as it stands, it's their building. That's the operative word here. It is their building and it belongs to them. Our building will actually be about, I believe, 10 inches to a foot away from it. And then that gap will be flashed and filled. So you won't see that building.
All right, thank you. Just a temporary, put smiling faces on all these.
I didn't budget for that.
All right, very good. Any other questions for Badger or Matt? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, sir. Carry on.
Thanks, folks. Have a great night.
You too.
Yeah.
Okay. Our next item is discussion and action on direct legislation petition for ordinance 23-008 to require referendum for the sale or commercial use of certain city-owned lakefront property. And this is tab 6 of your packet.
I'll make a motion. I would like to make a motion to deny the direct legislation petition for ordinance 23-008 to require referendum for the sale of commercial use of certain city-owned lakefront property.
Second.
Okay, motion by Dave, second by Mary. Any questions? Wait.
Just want to clarify that the motion to deny approval means the ordinance would be pushed to referendum.
Sure. So it's voting against directly petitioning and adopting the ordinance. So it would then go to referendum in the spring. Any questions?
No, I think it's, just as important as the land is, like if we were to automatically adopt it, I think it kind of has some unintended consequences to some extent. And also from an elected official, and there's a lot of things that I think that we definitely need to get more community support on and a lot of community input on. And I'll be frank, everyone knows, right? We're not great at doing that. It's not an easy thing. We don't have a public affairs specialist sitting with Scott. I think as council members, I know for me, I personally try really hard to get public comment. I've been the one who's with the Parks Committee. We try to, have meetings and stuff, and it is difficult. So I see the intent of this, but I also think the importance of it. I'm comfortable not accepting it and then letting the community decide if it's something that they feel like that's, necessary for their, to vote on that they want to see. So, I think.
I agree with you, Jim.
Yeah, I personally think denying it kind of just lets our community decide if this is something that they want in their legislation.
Anything further, Tracy?
Well, I just think that the community-wide, support gaining, who really wants this. It's really important to have that go to the vote.
And then Tom and then Mary.
I'm out talking to people all the time. I try to do that because that's my job. The people are telling me there's about half of what signed that petition said they wish that the city would have sold that land. They want to develop. The other half that I have talked to, which is more than what signed that petition, said they are tired of the city of Washburn being poor. This is revenue for the city. Let's do it. Let's get it done.
Mary?
Clarification on the referendum though. As was presented here, the ordinance, was asked that we approve. Will this be the same language that goes to the referendum?
That's required.
It is required. So what we're looking at is going to have to be what the referendum is.
Yes, but the notice or the note and the explanation that's in the ballot in the information is different than what's provided. But the actual ordinance of what is voted on is what is exactly, yes.
So who determines the language on the ballot?
The answer to the question, as I understand it, and what my intentions were, if I can fit the core language of the ordinance on the ballot, that's what I would do, because that would be the clearest and it would be a simple yes. Do you want to adopt the city to adopt this, yes or no? But if we cannot fit the core language, then it has to be summarized. And I would take my best crack at summarizing.
And the city is got to provide that summary. It's not up to the petitioners or this direct legislation to provide that summary.
Okay, and just to finish that out then, I am glad it will go to referendum because the city now can put out the education and true facts that'll move forward as opposed to what's been put out there possibly on the street and threatening tactics and misinformation and the idea that we could in the future sell the property. I mean, scare tactics tick me off to no end. From what I've heard, there was a lot of that out there, so going to referendum and the clarity of a referendum is a much better move than moving forward with the ordinance right now.
And the only thing I'll add to that is it does kind of muddy this issue with use by a group like North Coast Community Sailing. And that's something that's going to have to get looked at as part of the whole issue moving forward and maybe it can't be part of the explanation because it's kind of just unclear in the language, but somehow we will need to address that situation.
But it may very well remain unclear. That's the thing.
Right.
So the city's ability to get true facts out there and what will be dissed to decide if it was to go forward to stop anything will be clarified through facts and not through anyone.
So I see Tom and then Tracy, and then was there someone over here? No. Tom?
My question's for Matt. Does the city take precedence of some other stuff?
No. As far as, what are you asking?
We have to do something because the city needs revenue?
No, the city cannot override if this direct legislation petition is passed, the city cannot override it under any circumstance. It can be amended or altered after 2 years.
So
After
it can be
it's passed.
sunsetted?
If
need be?
It can't be sunsetted, because a sunset is something that automatically expires after a certain amount of time. But after 2 years, the city can essentially address this issue again with amendments to its ordinances. But nothing can be done except by another referendum within that 2-year period.
Okay, then.
So my question addresses, so how does the city, go about providing accurate information for people before the referendum so that people can make an informed decision? Like, can we sponsor a forum? I mean, what
So there's-
naturally occur, or what can appropriately occur?
If
I
you
guess
were-
that's my.
Sure, if you recall with the last referendum, we had lots of ways that we got that information out about the EMS. And the reasoning for that referendum. So we had information on the website. We had public information sessions in person, also available online. We had information go out in the newsletter, yes. You know, we can really work on getting information out before a referendum. That's gonna have to happen.
Because once again, I think the intent, right, is to, like, the community wants, I mean, the referendum, right, is to make sure that you have adequate public support for decisions that are made. So for example, we'll just say the yurts, right? Like, did we have adequate, we tried. I feel like, you know, we had a couple sessions, but maybe that wasn't enough. And so but the unintended consequences of like North Coast sailing, and I just think like we should be clear on like, I don't think it's a terrible referendum in terms of like if our community supports it, but there are some unintended consequences. And my question is could some unintended consequences be resolved so that it's not like, oh, well, this is a terrible idea because North Coast Sailing won't be able to operate, and it's great for our kids, but they charge money, so therefore they can't do it there, you know? And so I guess, I don't know, I just want to.
I think we're gonna have to lay out some possible scenarios.
Yeah.
And issues that are complicated and factual that need to be thoroughly looked at as part of the referendum.
So whose
And there are-
responsibility will that be then, just so, it's done and it's done in a very methodical, I mean, is that all? I mean,
Fair way.
And fair way.
Because I feel like our community, I like this process, the fact that our community can bring this forth is something that's important. And I mean, I think the process, I would say, I get sued by environmental groups all the time. I'm like, it's fine, because people are, if that's what people's concerns are, then we should take a hard look at that and see if it's their support. And so I think the process is good. I just want, like, same thing, like, how's that gonna be? Is it April?
I will, yes, it's in April, and I will say that there already have been several questions that I have looked at about what interaction this proposed ordinance would have with our existing ordinances, with other groups out there, and I will do my best to provide my opinion on that. If any council members have a question that they would like to be addressed or clarified or have an opinion on, submit those to Scott. That can be included. Maybe we'll have a questions page on the website or something like that. So, yes, so that we can address those and ultimately, just so everyone's clear here, my role as city attorney is to represent the city. The city isn't taking a stance one way or another, opposing or approving or backing this. It's just providing as close as possible objective answer to these potential legal questions.
Right.
Nothing will prevent the petitioners of this referendum from going out there and providing whatever information that they want. But from a city standpoint, we would appreciate any questions coming in. Hey, how does this interact with this or this or this? Because you do see in Wisconsin doesn't allow state direct legislation at the state legislature, but states that do, you see a lot of in the news, you hear a lot of direct legislation issues coming up, and they seem very well intentioned, but all of the interrelated ordinances, laws, regulations that apply, typically you can't see all of those just as applied to one ordinance. I think our current code of ordinances is 500 to 600 pages. So knowing when you write this 2-paragraph ordinance, how it's going to interact with every other one of them, plus all of the state statutes that might come into this, is difficult. So if you have anything that you think, hey, even if you think it's an outside chance that there might be some interaction, send that to Scott so that we can have some clarification, or we can look at it and say, yes, this would or wouldn't impact it, and here's a best guess as to what it would happen. There's probably, in a lot of them, there might be some certainty, But in a lot, it might be somewhat of a gray area as to how it would come out at the end of this.
Thank you, that's helpful. Yeah, I like the fact that we're, what you said, that we're not taking a stance one way or the other, we're going to provide the best information of how it will impact and what. I think that's, I feel more comfortable. Thank you.
Okay, so there's a motion on the floor and a second to not approve the direct legislation petition for the ordinance requiring a referendum for the sale or commercial use of certain city-owned lakefront property. Any other questions before we vote? Seeing none, all in favor of the denial of this?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes, and this will automatically go to referendum in the spring. Next item is discussion and action on approval of Thompson's West End Park Campground expansion plans and authorization to bid. Ironically. Tab number 7 in your packet is what we are looking at.
I make a motion to approve the Thompson's West End Campground Extension Plan.
I'll second it.
Motion by Mary and second by Tom to approve the expansion plans and authorization to bid. And just to clarify,
We do have Nicole Cooper in here to answer any questions or do a short presentation on this information.
oh, great, thank you.
Hello, Mayor and council members and city staff. I'm Nicole Hodkiewicz with Cooper Engineering, and I've been working with the city to design the expansion and create the construction plans, which I believe you have in your packets. Just a really brief overview on the project, and if you have the plans, sheet number 5 would be a good one to look at. It's a project overview, and the project is basically broken down into 2 areas. We have the RV area, which is 5 RV sites and 4 tent camping sites in what's been called the overflow area. And then the second part is on that first open field to the east, 4 yurt sites. These 2 different areas would be connected by a bridge that's about 56 feet long, about 10 feet wide. And then another aspect of the project is the shower/bathroom area or building, which would have 2 showers and 4 bathrooms. And then there's also sanitary sewer and water hookups for the RV sites, but not for the yurt sites. And then ultimately there's electrical requirements for the bathroom building and then the yurt area. So that's another component of the project. And the next steps on this, if it would get approved, would be to finalize the specifications. That we have a draft form right now, the specs and the bidding documents. We would still need to apply for the utility approval from sanitary from the DNR and the water extension from the Department of Safety and Professional Services, and then DNR permitting for the construction itself. And then, bidding whenever you would, want to do that. So that's kind of a really brief wrap up of the project and a summary of kind of the different aspects of the project. So I don't know if anyone has questions about that.
One question for you. Thank you for your work on this. I'm assuming that you used not only the information that was gathered in the public information process, but also the plan, the campground plan that was adopted in 2015 as this plan was being developed.
Yes, we did. I worked with Scott and Tony over the last, I don't know, 10 months or so. And we've had, I'd say, quite a few interim meetings and draft plans back and forth, draft layouts. And so I believe what's come up with now is reflective of that plan.
Very good. Thank you. Tracy and then Tom.
I have a question. We talked about the center where the yurts are, that there would be an area for the public, like little trails, native plantings, you know, that the community is more community focused. And I didn't see anything in the plans on that.
Because it's just, we just left that blank. So that's, I know there's been talk about different native plant gardening or public spaces for, I don't know, throwing a Frisbee around or whatever. So that area would just be wide open and the community could use it as they would like. So there's nothing specifically planned beyond the 4 yurts and the trail itself.
If I could follow up on that.
Yes.
So it is something that could certainly be done, but we're not at this point, we haven't added it into this plan to be built as part of whoever may be the contractor on this. It's something that if you do want a community group to do a native plant garden or something like that, that could be done by them themselves. They should not include that in a construction plan. So.
I just wanted to make that, because that was a kind of a bone of contention, because I think people were like, we're only focusing on the tourists, you know, with these yurts, and that this wasn't going to be used as a community, you know, an opportunity for the community to use, you know, and enjoy that space. And I want to emphasize that that has been, you know, included. It's just that in this engineering plan, it isn't reflected.
Right, and I will say, I'm working with Tony and Scott over these last months. It was made very clear to us that they wanted that middle area open as much as possible for whatever the community would like to do there. And Tony did specifically bring up, you know, native plants or just more open space for the community to come in, but there was no actual, like, you know, plan for what that might be. So it's just kind of an open slate, and I think Scott kind of said it well, where he said that would be something that a contractor, it's not really part of our contract, but that civic groups or, you know, people in the city could use that area or you know, do something there that would be for the community itself. So that, you know, there was an emphasis to leave that space open in the middle. So
Tom?
I do have one question. I don't know if you know or not. Is it possible that that overflow, once this camping is set up, because it has direct hookups, could we leave that open like through the end of November?
right now, the design of this is planned so that in the fall, the city would be able to go inside the bathroom / shower building and hook up a compressor and blow out the water lines. The sanitary will be gravity flow to the lift station. So it would depend on, right now it's not designed to like not thaw, I mean not freeze. So right now, the way the designs are, if this didn't happen, lines would freeze. So it would depend on when the city itself would decide to, do this maintenance of the water lines. And, close the bathroom and so on.
And just to clarify, the restroom would be open year-round itself, the restroom itself?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not the.
But not
the hookups.
Not the hookups.
So you could camp there, just not use the hookups for water?
Yeah.
Which is a way to extend the season without.
Yeah, because I was curious about extending it out because there is hunters that come up there and they would like to stay. We have people, the lake is open, they want to fish.
They can just do that without water. Be self-contained. And they could still hook up to the sanitary, you said?
Yes. that's a gravity flow to the lift station, and there's a couple areas of low cover. We have insulation over that, so the sanitary would not freeze, so, right. But the water hookups, those lines would have to get blown out because they're not deep enough to not freeze.
Anyone else?
So can you tell us how what we just voted on impacts this? Because if we're going to referendum in April and letting this out for bid until our community gets to like go on this, vote on this referendum, I mean, it seems kind of a choices.
I'll let
Scott
talk about the timeline.
And that's a good question, and this is actually going to be a question for Nicole as well. So based on what has happened, the portion of this project that would be impacted by the referendum, if the voters would vote for that ordinance, is the yurt portion of this project plan. So the question really is, does the city want to proceed with this in advance of that referendum or not? In order to, under the assumption that the ordinance would be approved, correct me if I am incorrect here, Max, we would have to have a contract in hand for at least the yurt portion of this project prior to the election for construction.
Yes, the approval alone wouldn't give a vested right under the current ordinances, in my opinion, right now.
So a signed contract.
Yes.
The question then becomes, which is not ideal, this actually creates more cost. The question then becomes, can we split this project into two phases and do the yurt portion of the construction and proceed with getting that immediately so that we would have the ability to have approval and a contract signed prior to the first week of April?
Physically, yes, that could be possible, and you could have a contract by April. And you know, the pros and cons of that are it's more in my mind a con, because like you said, then you're bidding two different prices and two different projects, and then you know, you have two different times of disturbance of the area for construction. But yes, it is possible.
Is it possible to do the entire project and have a signed contract by that time?
I believe so too, yeah. I think either way, because these plans, unless, you know, anybody has looked at these and there's anything major, these are done as far as I'm concerned. So now it's a matter of, and I have a draft spec put together, so now it's a matter of, you know, finalizing the spec and the bidding documents and bidding the project, simultaneously working on getting our permits for DNR for utility, DSPS for water, and then our DNR construction permits, you know, between now and when the project would start, let's say, you know, middle of May-ish.
Okay, so with that, the reason why the city may wish to proceed with half or the entire thing, there's a couple other considerations here. The referendum puts this pressure on, unfortunately. It does not allow us to apply for additional DNR funding in time to lower the cost of this project, because that would be due the beginning of May.
Which would be up to 50%.
So that itself is an issue, and you'd have to decide how you'd want to proceed with it. That would be one reason to split the project in two. Would we be successful at that grant? I cannot say. We were not successful this year. We learned a few things. We'll try again, hopefully score better. But I could not say if we would be successful. The other factor that you need to consider is, if the city wants to proceed with this project, your window to do this is now. Because of the next agenda item that we will get to, I will explain how we would have to finance this. We will not have an opportunity to do this for many years. So that puts the other pressure on. So this is not a good situation. But that's what it comes down to.
That's where we are. So I really wish that we didn't have to deal with this right now. And I wish we could wish and wish. I wish that this weren't affecting this project at this very moment, and it were for future development other than this particular project, which we had already been so far along in the process on. Because 50% of the project cost that we could have gotten paid by the DNR is substantial. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars that we now have to pay because we want to do what we have been planning to do for many years with lots of public input, and now we aren't able to get funding to help pay for it. And now the taxpayers are going to have to pay more to do this project because of some concern by some citizens that is coming to fruition in this manner. So, does anyone else have any questions or comments?
Question from
Or,
the floor.
and I'm sorry, I cannot open the, well, unless someone opens the floor, I can't call on the audience at this time.
I do have a question on financing. I'm still a little, it's hard to make a decision without like the financing. And so when I look at the full project of the 1.2 million, you know, without getting grant funding, you know, I put a lot of work into this. And so it's very difficult, like, is this the timing to do this? And I know, like you said, we can't do it for a couple of years. I know that that's not
A couple
Couple-
is wrong, it is way more.
Way more than
more than
that.
that.
Because
I'm not seeing anything in the memo about 10 years or 5 years.
So this is, I think we've talked about that at multiple meetings. This is our borrowing that we are going to be doing. That's going to include the highway project, this project, the fire truck, whatever else major we need to include. Then we're going to have another highway phase that we're going to have to borrow for. So there's going to be no extra room here for a long, long time.
Okay.
Could have used some of that borrowing power for beautification and or other things in the city that the taxpayers would have enjoyed, I'm sure, along with the business owners. So it's pretty disturbing, not happy, but here we go.
So choices are, I'm still confused about like, splitting it. Like, what is splitting it? Please explain that one more time.
And I can try to just address that real quick. So splitting it would mean that we would be able to apply for grant funding for part of the project then, but it's going to just increase the cost and have other deleterious effects by splitting it. So, do you want more of an explanation than that?
Well, when we're talking splitting the project, I mean, you're talking taking off and not doing the yurts at this time because it's in that piece.
No, it'd be the opposite. We would do the yurts first because we have a timeline. We're working with them to get that part done. So that and there's a chance, if the referendum passes, saying that yes, the citizens want to vote on any of the commercial use and development of that property, you know, do we want to do this before that referendum, or do we want to wait? And, you know, we have a choice here where we could say, we do want to apply for the DNR funding, so we're going to delay and just see how the referendum goes, and maybe it'll get voted no, and then we can wait a little bit and actually apply for the DNR funding. It's a risk. We're rolling the dice here. Anyone feel lucky?
Well, but there's another choice too, where you just postpone the yurts until the referendum's done and do that 10 years from now or whatever, or you don't find a different way to pay for it, because you can still apply for grants. And right now, you go move forward with the RV. I mean, so there's lots of choices. I mean, I just don't want us to say there's this choice or this choice. There's several choices, right? So one of them is doing the RV, which is 106,000, and then the
How much?
100
RV is the most expensive part of the whole project.
No, it's 106. I'm not done. So the RV is 106,000, and then the bathroom has to be done. We know that that's a community service, and that services a lot of other things, like in your mental. So that's those two pieces together, right? Which essentially is half, almost. You know, you put those two and you don't do the other. So there, I guess there's different. I just wanted to point out that there's different choices. You know.
So it comes down to if the referendum passes, and we don't do anything, the referendum passes, there will be no votes, period. There would be nothing happening from 6th all the way to Washington.
Well, unless.
There is another option there, and that's that if the referendum passes, and the city council still wants to do this with the yurts, that goes to referendum for the electors to approve it.
And the soonest that would happen would be November?
It could be November, or with this type of direct legislation, it does allow for the city to call for a special election. I know that's not what, by any means, what the city wants to do, because it's difficult to meet all of our election requirements anyway.
I'm just saying there's choices, right? I mean, that is a path, right? That path is that if you feel like the community ordinance is out there, you want to see how that plays out and then follow it accordingly, that is a choice. There's choices, right?
Kiss it goodbye.
Does anyone care to open the floor since someone wants to make a comment or has a question?
I move to open the floor.
I'll second it. So motion by Jen, second by Tracy to open the floor for public.
Thank you.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Can I see?
Sorry, that motion failed.
That was.
For opening the floor, motion was by Jen, second by Tracy. And then those who voted in favor of that were Jen, Tracy, and John. And the rest voted against. So, sorry about that. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion or questions? The motion is to approve the whole plan, correct? Mary
Yes.
and Tom?
Yes.
Question, Jared?
You, just real quick here,
Yep.
on the revenue per year that we're showing on the year proposal and full service RV proposal. This is revenue per year. Got the number of the income. Is that revenue through the loan servicing? Is that revenue after the loans have been serviced?
Is that a question for?
So like, hey, factoring the loan payment,
There's gross on that, and the gross is the payment to the bank included.
Is that, I only use the figures factored in for the construction and recurring costs. So, the loan payment is not included.
And I can discuss that more in the next agenda topic.
Okay, so just so we're on the motion, that means that we try to get, the motion is to move forward on all pieces, right? And then does that mean we're trying to get the contract in hand for like the whole thing? So that, I just need clarity, because there was a bunch talked about. I just be clear. Thank you. Go ahead.
If I can, my understanding is the motion is just to approve the plan, not made anything in the motion that would authorize going to bid for all or part of the plan. The motion that I heard right now is simply to approve what the documents show.
It says to approval of the plans and authorization to bid.
That would either need to be an addition, or you can discuss that after this motion.
Did you mean to, what was your motion? Was it for both the plans and the authorization to bid?
I would like that, but I think there's time for discussion. Right now, it's for the entire plan. to accept the entire.
So it's just for the plans?
Yes.
Just for the plans?
Yes.
Okay,
So, question.
at this time. John, go ahead.
So, there isn't any conflict at all that I can see with the overflow and with the bathroom area, restroom, shower area. There's no conflict at all. If
Conflict in what way?
Hmm?
What do you mean by conflict?
There's nobody saying that we can't do it, we can't, put out a bid on it or anything else. There's the area over here with the yurts, that's true. But I'm a little confused, if we approve all of it and it, doesn't pass as far as referendum, do we lose every bit of it, including the overflow?
I'm not sure I understood your question.
No, I don't think that would invalidate the whole approval right now. If the referendum passed, and the city would have to then reevaluate what it was doing with these plans and what had been bid,
Okay.
then we could,
B plans,
yes.
this is the question. Is B plans include everything from, the yurts to, all of the overflow? Or are these two distinct things?
So the plans, in my opinion here, what's happening is the plans are being approved for the whole project. If the referendum is passed, that doesn't invalidate approving these plans. That just prevents the city from moving forward at that time, if it hasn't been done already, with converting this use to a commercial use. So it doesn't do anything with the approval of the plans. So these plans will still stay valid even if the referendum.
So what I'm driving at is that if this moves to having to authorize, put out the bid and so on, if the yurts are not approved, does that invalidate the approval of the overflow?
No.
Under
If
any
the yurts are not approved in the future you mean if the referendum is passed that doesn't allow for the yurts?
Okay, so it's just a referendum on the yurts, the overflow goes no matter what.
So what is on the motion right now is for approval of the plans. These plans are approved, referendum has nothing to do with that, because they're just plans. The next motion that we make is authorizing the bids for these projects. If we submit one single bid for the whole project, and the referendum comes back that we can't do the whole project as one bid, that could potentially create a problem and allow the contractor, whoever we bid with, to cancel that contract and get out of the whole project. But it doesn't invalidate the plans that we're approving. So my recommendation is, if you want this to move forward, is to approve the plans as they are for the whole project, because that doesn't impact what happens with the referendum. And then approve requesting bids. If possible, we can request the bids in alternatives as well. One for the whole project, one for just the RV, one for the overflow. And we can hopefully build in language in the lowest bidder, whatever the lowest bidder is, build in language to those contracts to allow for some flexibility pending the outcome of this referendum. So my recommendation, if you want this to move forward, is approve the plans, approve billing or submission of bids with alternatives for each specific project.
Thanks. I have one more.
Yeah, that clarifies things, thank you.
Okay, Jen?
My only concern about the plans, we're just talking about the plans, my only concern about the plans is, I'm kind of echoing what Tracy was talking about in terms of, if we keep talking about how we have no money to do anything, these plans, like the community really talked about native plantings, were never, and we talked a lot about this during the public meetings, we're not very good at that, right? We're not very good at following through. I mean, it is hard to get vegetation established, getting that kind of stuff done, but I feel like having nothing in here or a budget for some type of working with a community group or landscape art, because I do agree that the construction plans might not be the place for it. I do get that. But I also feel like if we don't include it or think about it, then it's not going to happen, right? Because we're going to be tapped for money, it'll be very difficult. So I'm not sure of options on how to address that, but I'm just trying to give like I said, I worked really hard. Parks Committee worked really hard to come up with these different scenarios. We talked a lot about what to do in that like place. So I guess, Scott, do you have any thoughts of like how that can be addressed later so it doesn't fall off the table? It's just concerning to me, that's all.
We would need to, potential options, just to make sure that it doesn't get forgotten, is to perhaps there could be a conceptual indication of a community plant garden in the future indicated on the plan. And what we would need to do to fund that is we have to remember, if you're going to go to the next step and authorize bids after you're discussing this, we're going to have to allocate some amount of funds, some sort of budget to accomplish that as well.
Okay. Because we talked about, native plantings for screenings, like all sorts of things. And what I'm seeing in here is an open field and 4 yards. And so I just think we can do better than that. I think there are plans that showed the community wanted something a little bit better than that. So just want to make sure that that's not off the table.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
And it's kind of a drop in the bucket compared to the whole. You're talking like $1.2 million, like a ton of money, and like not doing the proper like aesthetic beauty of it is like something that I feel like we can just do better on.
So would that require an amendment to the motion?
No, not right now.
I mean, to approve the plans?
Go ahead. I can actually, what Scott said, that's one way we could handle it. We could show in our plans, kind of circle around that open area and say, future plans for community
use and native gardening.
Right. Or as another alternative, we could either come up with a plan that's part of this contract that you would actually hire someone to do, but that adds more costs, and it seemed like part of this was getting the community involved, even like maybe high school kids or, getting kids to, get out there and do these plantings. Another thing, that kind of a third option that we could do is come up with a plan where we have a bid, like we come up with a grid, let's say one native plant every 1 foot or 2 foot square, come up with a quantity and then have that price of that material in the bid, the plants, and then have it so that, a community group actually does the planting. So then, kind of those 3 different phases, just say this is reserved for community native planting, just put it all in the bid so it gets done with the project, or have it where we bid out the plants, per plant, and then in the meantime, from now until when it would get done, somebody would spearhead this from the city and work with whatever groups could come in and actually do the planting, but then the plants show up, on the site. But, so kind of 3 different ways, or if somebody here is, knows a lot about native plantings, they could specify, exactly what they would want. So.
John?
Well, we have a lot of native plants in our garden down by the post office. Once upon a time, we had lots of native plants all over down there. One of the big things is we're mowing them. And so, you have a lot of things like New England aster that come up, very tall plants, 6 feet tall or more. Very colorful, very useful for bees and things, but the whole point of being native plants. We have a lot of other seed. There's another native plant garden down there where we are welcomed in to come and collect seed. It's just, a native garden is just not that difficult. That's why they call them native, I think. And so I can see where that could be something that could become a community project just with a lot of people wanting to do it because it's easy to do.
So are you advocating for one of those 3 choices? Or?
Well, I think that first of all, if we're going to have a native garden, we need to have a place that we designate as such. And the second thing is then that it is not something that's going to be mowed as such, but it also isn't going to be necessarily, while it's growing, beautiful and pretty and nicely raked and rowed and everything else. it is going to be rather tangled and a bit wild. That's the point on a native garden. And so a lot of what comes up over a summer season and blooms oftentimes quite a bit of them in the fall. And so we're just going to put up with it if we're going to have a native garden.
So are we trying to specify where we want the public use versus the native gardens, or is that one and the same? Because if you remember, right.
We already, when you submitted the plan, it was in the center. I don't think we need to even talk about that. I think it's just an intention that that's gonna be developed. I think that's what I'm hearing from you, Jen.
I just, the bottom line is like, if you're gonna do something like that, it's gonna require a plan, it's gonna require money. And so what concerns me is that if you're gonna do something in the middle, I mean, I respect John, but if you put this plant, if you don't mow it, you just put plants in there, it's not gonna work. And so it needs to be intentional, and it needs to have money associated with it. So I was just putting out a concern that, to me, I just don't see an avenue of it getting done. So I don't know what those avenues of getting it done without spending money and putting something, allocating dollars for it when we keep saying, oh, you have to do something now because we can't do anything for a long, long time. I'm hearing all these
things.
Of
this magnitude, yeah.
Well, I don't know. So if I bring this up in a year and say I need $40,000 to do something in the middle of this, I mean, those are my questions. And so I just feel like we're missing the boat a little bit on the yurt design, bottom line. And I think it's gonna cost money to do it in the future. And I know how tough it is to get money in the future. So I was looking at options. And there's a motion on the table, that's fine. I'm just looking at options, right?
Is there a way to get that middle section included in the walking trail maintenance plan and have that be part of that?
Sure, I mean, the Parks Committee, I mean, that's something the Parks Committee could do, is to try to come up with a plan or something like that and look at what the drawings were from the community. I don't remember, but I think when the community did the drawings, there was a bunch of different renditions. And people had like a trail going here.
Right.
And so, you know, it's like anything, you talk about how, like, if you have equipment out there and, you know, all of a sudden we're not doing anything in the middle, the next time you get equipment out there to do a trail, it's gonna be that much more money. And so I'm just pointing out the fact, like, I mean, I don't have a solution for it, but you're spending $1.2 million doing a plan, and you're not including anything for a piece that was pretty, I would say, important to the community.
So is that an acceptable way to plan for that part of the plan, since it's not in the construction plan? Or do we want to, and we would have to make an amendment to the motion, wouldn't we, to include any other?
I just want to go back to Ed. I think you were alluding to the fact that you didn't need to make an amendment, that you could work on those drawings a little bit more and add.
But this is being approved as is.
Okay.
If the motion is to approve the plans as is. So we would either need to amend the motion or come up with a different way to plan for the.
I would at least like to see something in the middle about like future, I mean, I don't know.
So to stop this, my motion would be to accept the plans as presented, but to also move into these plans a center native garden in the yurt area.
And I mean, we can somewhere on the plan put a circle and say, as simple as what Scott said,
Yes.
reserved for native plantings by community. Simple as that.
Yes.
It's a note on the plans, and I don't think that changes anything.
I think we don't want to lose the community use part of that.
That's what we don't want.
Because some of it is open and some of it is native planting, you know, like we don't want to say the whole thing is native plantings.
Oh,
and
no.
then people who want to play frisbee are
Sorry,
mad
I
because
didn't
they
mean
can't do
that. I meant pretty much what you're understanding
But
is a garden, not a overtake of the
The
open
contractor
space.
wouldn't really do
Right.
any of this. All it is a representation of your wishes that there's gonna be native plantings and an open space
Yes.
for community activities.
Yes.
And that could just be notes on the plan that wouldn't change the price and it wouldn't change, the approval of these plans. It's not changing them in any significant way.
So is that going to be your motion?
Yes, that would be my motion.
Tom, are you okay with that as
Yeah,
a
I'm
second?
fine with that.
Okay. John?
You know, if you just got rid of the word native, just say plantings, and then let the community decide what's gonna get planted, everybody would be happy. And it's native plantings and plantings, oftentimes are two different things. And you can have gardens next to each other. Just, why don't we just plant it when we get ready to plant it? We don't have to specify what goes in.
Gardens and community use.
Community activities.
Community activities.
Yes.
Good. Okay, so any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed. Can I just ask one question, just so we get this right? So we'll make the change, but somewhere on the plans in an appropriate place, we are gonna have a note to kind of point to that center area and say gardens and community activities?
Yes.
That's satisfactory? Okay, thank you.
And next is the authorization to bid. And that's before we even get into financial piece. Do you have anything else to provide for information as far as the authorization to bid, or is that?
So just so everyone is familiar with the process, authorization to bid is, they complete the final work, get the required permits. We put this out for contractors to bid. We would receive that bids. You will then have to decide if you would accept them. We're under the assumption that those bids would come back within budget. There's always the possibility that they don't, which then leads us to go back and have to figure out what to do. But then, any questions on that process, how that works?
Do we need to specify that we want alternates?
It's good to do so, but I think that's a good idea, given the circumstances.
So I would make a motion to put out to bid the entire plan, but broken down into.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Mary, second by Tom, to authorize bid on the project with a breakdown of the whole project and then alternates without certain elements.
So
Or with individual elements, I guess.
my only question on that is, so we're not trying to get a contract in hand to move forward with the yurts before the April 15th referendum.
I think we are.
So we are. So what's the alternates have to do with it? So the alternates have to do with it if it was approved, then we wouldn't be able to do it. And we would not be able to move forward with the contract, and we'd have to pull the yurts out. Is that true?
That's, as far as I understand, that's my current recommendation. I'll work with Scott to figure out the exact wording that we need here to, essentially the alternates are building in contingencies to allow the city to move forward with whatever it can, and pending the outcome of the referendum.
Okay, so if the referendum, say it was approved, then just because we have a contract in hand, doesn't mean we can still move forward with it and go against the
Yes,
referendum.
if the city has already entered into a contract for the development, and this is my opinion at this moment, if the city has already entered into a contract for and started the progress of constructing these yurts, then that would not be stopped at that point if the referendum were passed, because it would already be transferred or created as that commercial use prior to the passing of this
So
referendum.
then why do the alternates?
Because there's a chance that we don't get a response, we don't get things back in time to get it all set and moving forward by the time the referendum comes through. Was my understanding.
This is just authorizing it. It's not saying that
Yes.
it's gonna be all the way done by then. But it's authorizing.
And the reason for doing that was to say, okay, and my understanding is to have as many options on the table for the city in this instance, so that pending the outcome of the referendum, we can move forward with something in this current budget cycle. if we just do the one, put out bids for the full project, we don't get it done in time, the referendum comes through, it says you can't do any of this work, we have to go back out for new bids, we miss this budget cycle, and then we miss the vote for the next however long on any additional market. So this is opening the door for as many options as possible.
Right, but including in that option is the fact if the community says yes to the referendum, that we're moving forward with the yurts before it can be voted on.
Yes.
So just to be clear intention, right, I mean, it's a clear intention.
Absolutely.
Just want to make sure we're all very much, maybe it's just because it's a little slow, but.
Oh, we got it.
Okay.
John?
But doesn't that also cover North Coast Saving?
If and when, that's one of those questions that we're gonna address and put on the website as to how this potential referendum could impact North Coast Sailing.
So if something's grandfathered in, because you got it all together before the referendum, it just seems logical that the referendum doesn't affect it.
The North Coast Sailing contracts renew every single year, and it's not a city operation that's already in place, and a type of use that's already set and established. That's a recurring.
We would be able to update that contract if we wanted to, I guess.
Right.
Yes. So it wouldn't mean that North Coast Sailing couldn't, the passing of this referendum wouldn't mean that they couldn't continue to use the city beach for their sailing club. Just means that they couldn't charge a fee for it. And that's not a set thing that's already been constructed, that's already in place, like the yurts would be. They'd be there, they'd be set, they'd already be converted to that type of camping use. The North Coast Sailing Club's agreement is just a renewed agreement every single year. So every year the city votes, we are authorizing this for commercial use. We are authorizing this for commercial use. Whereas if we actually go forward and construct the yurts, transfer this into a type of camping space, that is a one-time transfer, and then it is that use from then on.
But then future development anywhere further along, if the referendum were to pass, would have to go to referendum.
I see, hang on just a minute, I see that. Why can't we give North Coast Sailing a 5-year contract or something? I mean, I don't understand why it has to be a year.
We probably could, and that's one of the things that could be addressed moving.
But that's
if
not
you
on
want to do
tonight's
that, that's not on tonight's agenda. But if you want to do that before this referendum date, that's something that could be considered, because the ordinance says that it shall not be converted to a commercial use. So if it already is being used for that, it requires a referendum for any future change in use.
Bingo, you got it.
Yeah.
Okay, that was gonna be my question. Same thing, like we could do that if we want. Okay, thanks.
And we've already voted not to open the floor, so I cannot call on you. Sorry, audience. Anyone else have questions on this motion, which is to authorize bidding of this project with alternates?
So the alternates are going to be separated between the east side of Sixth Avenue and the west side of Sixth Avenue. Is that?
I believe.
I'm understanding.
Yeah, okay. That just want to be clear.
Yeah, so both together and then those two parts separate.
Okay.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
All right. I have a feeling some folks are here for the future items on the agenda, and you're learning all sorts of interesting things about the city, aren't you? Okay, our next item is a public hearing discussion in action on the 2023, payable 2024 municipal tax levy. This is tab 8 of your packet. Final step in this long budget process. Not the final step in this long budget process. Okay. So is there a motion to open the public hearing? So I've got Dave and a second by Tracy. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Our public hearing is in session. Is there anyone here who would like to make a comment regarding the municipal tax levy? Seeing no one, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Tom, second by Jared. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. No one wants to talk about the budget? Come on. Okay, so next is discussion and action on the levy. And
any additional changes to any of those line items.
okay. First, we have an opportunity, if anyone has any changes, any council members have changes to any of the four different budgets, or the four different line items here.
Any things in the operating budget, the capital budget, or the debt service, which we discussed and I have included in the packet. So, I don't have any additional updates to provide you except what was in my mail.
So to the general fund, debt service, and capital budget. Any changes to any individual line items?
So would this be a place that we set aside, I don't know, $15,000 or something for the, like in the parks line item to be able, if we're gonna move forward with the yurts, to have some plantings there that aren't part of the construction budget?
I think that would change some things. Hold on.
Just asking if this is the place to do it.
It would change some things. You'd have to find where you want that 15,000 to come from. The alternative to that is, and I've been on Tony to bring this up at the park committee meeting, with all of these various requests and potential projects, we need to have a budget for the park designated fund.
Yeah.
And that is another potential location where that funding could come from. Once we get here a couple clicks down and discuss the borrowing, another potential option will be is if the project would be bid and come in within our project budget and we would not use all of the necessary contingency dollars, the contingency dollars could be used for that purpose as well.
And I guess I just remember the park designated fund, we had used quite a bit of that for a matching, but then that didn't go through, right?
Correct.
So I stand.
Can you explain
use a lot of that money?
Can you
for the-
explain the designated fund real briefly?
The park designated fund is a fund that was established years ago. That was, in my opinion, one of the city's best ideas. We take I believe it is $5, $6 of every daily use campsite from that revenue, and we set that aside in a designated fund intended for park improvements, not maintenance, but park improvements.
Anywhere in the city, right?
Correct.
Not just like at the campgrounds.
And
Anywhere. Any park.
so that fund, well, recently it's been growing by around a little over $30,000 a year. And we use that fund to pay for the plans that you had just approved and other projects that come up to enhance, improve, and develop our park system.
We had a big chunk that went towards the matching. It was 80,000, it was a big chunk that we approved, but then we didn't get the grant. So we actually didn't use that big chunk of it. And I forgot about that. So we actually have, at one point, 600, and it was
right now the balance is, it's over 200,000 that we have.
Yeah.
So that,
So that's a great piece.
correct.
Totally forgot about it.
There you
So,
go.
And that's where.
Feeling better.
So
Feeling better.
the campgrounds not only cover the operating costs for all of the parks within the city, and we've been trying to increase that, but we also do set aside some for future capital improvements. Is it enough to do this project? No. But that's what we were talking about.
It's good for like matchings and stuff like that, like when you want to do something, it's nice to have.
Okay,
Thank you. Yeah, so I think that would be good, and I think doing its own budget in the future is also good too. Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions or ideas for changes to specific line items in the general fund, debt service, and capital budget? Seeing none. So am I taking a motion on each of these 4 items?
You don't need a motion on the first one, but we need motions on the next 2.
Okay. So the next one is action on resolution 23016, adopting the 2024 tax levy? 2023 tax levy.
So moved. I'll
Second.
Okay, I heard Mary and Tom first, so I'm going to give the motion to Mary and the second to Tom. On that resolution, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, action on resolution 23017, county library levy exemption.
I'll make a motion that we accept this. Second.
Okay, motion by Tracy, second by Jennifer. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now, discussion only on borrowing for capital projects and equipment. And I'm gonna probably turn this over to you, Scott.
So I'm going to go through a few things here. First, what was in your packet. The first sheet is kind of a listing of our known wants and desires. The items that are in blue are in our regular, have been approved in our regular, will be approved in our regular capital budget that we do each year. The items that are in tan are items that have been recommended by the committee that we borrow for. The items in white, we have not taken action on. So the committee has met, and we'll get back to this here in a little bit, and they have prioritized this list and are recommending at this point, if we can afford it, and I'll get into that here next, items 1 through 10, and that is the priority listing on there. Priority 1, obviously, is the Bayfield Street project. Priority 2 is the fire truck, and we do have representatives from the fire department that will want to talk a little bit about this here shortly. Item number 3 is the some public works equipment. Then item 4 is the West End Park expansion project, which you were just discussing. 5 and 6 are additional park improvements. 7 is a code codification project that is long overdue here with the city, reorganizing our ordinances into a more usable format in books that are not falling apart, having information more accessible online. Item 8 is another kind of a street slash park project, as is 9 is a park project, 10 is a park project. So that's kind of the list. Oh, the next page, you're going to see a gigantic spreadsheet. This is the detail that we know so far on the Bayfield Street project and how we are going to pay for this and what is included. I will state that this is not going to include any of the lateral loan or lateral programs. We did also receive a grant, which I have not discussed or talked about yet because it is way too complicated at this point, for some financing on some portions of lateral replacements for phase one. I gotta work on that. But what this is showing here is essentially, I gotta take this apart because I didn't really copy well. This is showing the grand total cost to the city related to the project. So the Bayfield Street project phase one cost to the city is going to be a little more than $4.8 million. Okay. We've received a $1 million community development block grant. We received a safe drinking water loan for the water portions of the project, which will have a 50% principal forgiveness on that. So that could give us up to a little over $1 million in principal forgiveness. The other half of that would be a loan that the water utility is going to have to take out. We are waiting yet for the mirror program for sewer. We will not hear on that program for a few more months. I would expect sometime in January. We would anticipate that our chances are pretty good. We scored pretty good on the water. I'm hoping that we score good on the sewer. And we have a similar program. So this is anticipated that next column, the 933,000, that's the sewer allocation of this project. So the potential grant forgiveness on that is going to be 345,000. So that's what we are hoping for at this time, and I will keep you posted. Then we start looking at, okay, so we have those three programs that are going to pay for a portion of this. What do we have left and what's eligible for what? It comes down to we need to finance we basically have how this all pans out. The very last line right now, we've got $942,000 that the city is going to need to borrow for in order to finance that portion of the project. And that's based on our approved contract with the contractor, engineering costs, contingencies, and so forth. So all those things that we know. We do know that our stormwater utility has already offset that. So stormwater is going to be contributing. We need to address we have to borrow more than that 900,000, but that 900 is what the general fund is going to have to take on. So we've got this all figured out as to all these components that are going to be contributing to the project, what we need to borrow for, and so forth. So for all intents and purposes, I'm leaving that at $1 million in this here sheet. Okay, so that's close enough for our purposes at this time. You are going to want to what I'm hoping that you're going to do here tonight is you're going to review what the committee has recommended as the priorities and make any potential changes to that or adopt that. That's what I'm looking for you to do. Now, to help you make that decision, I have put some papers that are on the table here tonight. I'm going to go through the big sheet here first. So this is what is labeled as Exhibit 5. And what we're looking at here is, this is a layout of all of our existing debt. And you're gonna see in purple, there are two proposed items there. There's the GO bonds and the GO note. So the bonds and the note are based off of that worksheet with 10 items. And the 10 approved in that, that totals $3.8 million that we would be issuing bonds for. There are a few items on there, such as public works equipment and the codification. Those are not bond eligible. Those are not 20-year life cycle items. So you can't and don't want to issue bonds for that. We have to separate that out and take out a regular note, promissory note. Most likely through a local bank, but if the local bank doesn't do it, we go through the state trust fund, whichever we would get the better rate from. But we want to put the rest into bonds. We get the best interest rate on that. At the moment, it's kind of looking at around 5.5% in that neighborhood is kind of what the current rates are coming in. So what this is showing is what the proposed debt as presented to you would look like going forward. These little sheets here just kind of give you a visual representation. So the first one, the projected debt levy. On the left-hand side, you're going to see the gray. The gray is our existing debt. You saw we have 23 the current year, 24, which is up for approval. You just approved the tax levy for that. So that's where the gray amount is at. Then you'll see how, and this was by design, this was not an accident, how it drops down for 25, but this purple is what is proposed being new. So the goal here has been of the city, unless you decide to change things, to really try to keep our debt service stable, helps keep that tax rate stable so you don't have wild fluctuations. So that's what this graph is showing, is how our debt service would be going to the future if you approve as presented right now. The next sheet shows what the actual debt is and where it's funded. So the blue line is essentially the same as the first page, but that green on top is the addition when we have those other funding sources contributing to our debt. So for example, right now for some of our debt, we have the Harbor Commission contributing. We do have some of the utilities contributing to some of the debt, for example, the solar panels at the treatment plant, a few things like that. But we would be increasing that for a bit because we will have, the proposal is to have stormwater pay for its share, so it would be contributing into this debt. So that's what that would look like. Going on to the last page there, you're going to see the projected levy, because 3 years from now, we're going to be right back here having these same discussions, because we are going to have to finance phase 2 of the Bayfield Street project. And what will that look like? Based on what we know right now, we're way too far away to apply for any of the same programs. We have to wait 3 years before we can apply for the same programs. We're projecting right now that phase 2 is going to cost what phase 1 did, or close to it. We haven't gotten into all that detail yet. So you're going to see that we're going to have, if things do not change, we're going to have a significant jump in our levy. Now, there's a few things that we can work towards in the future to try to smooth that out. We can try to put some of that on the back end of that borrowing. Hopefully interest rates are a whole lot better in 3 years, and we can look at refinancing this, and there's a few things that we'll be looking to do. But if what we're just done today, that will trigger tax increase because we need more levy to pay for the debt service. So that's just a projection at this point, but that's what I want to bring to your attention is you will see that our debt service going into the future is going to remain high for the next 20 years. There's not going to be a lot of room to do other projects and borrowings unless there is more development in the city. And so it comes down to how are we going to pay for all of these things? So that's kind of the background information on that. I have many other pages. I am not going to get into the utility debt because we have to do borrowings for water and sewer. We'll discuss that a different day. I'd like to go back to the wish list and discuss those specific items. I think you're fairly familiar with the Bayfield Street project. I would like to address the fire truck. And our fire chief and cohorts are here to help add any details to this. And they can discuss the need for the fire truck and any updates on getting prices. For the time being, in our sheet here, I have planned at this point $1.1 million for a new fire truck. There would be town contributions to this, and we need to let the towns know this because I did do a calculation somewhere. I have that of how much the towns would contribute, and if I remember my email correctly, I believe the city would end up paying about 45% of that fire truck. The towns, the three of them, would be paying the other 55% approximately. That has already been factored in the calculations of the debt service. We're going to need to have a discussion with them. That is going to be required per the contract. They themselves may need to do a borrowing as well if you move forward with the fire truck because they are subject to the same levy limits that we are. They cannot increase the levy unless they borrow the money. That's the same rule that we have. So they're going to need to plan and prepare for that as well. As far as the fire truck, I'm hoping maybe the chief has some additional information for us to discuss. And I would ask that the fire chief, one, explain the need to the fire truck to the council and provide any additional updates.
Hello. So do the background first, I guess. We have 2 engines at the fire department right now. Our newest one is a.
Oh, you want to use the microphone?
Is that better?
Can you try to like angle it up a little more? Or you could just pull it out. There you go.
How's that? Turn on.
Looks odd.
I guess you have to talk right into it.
Okay. Is that better? If I just talk louder, would that help?
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got 2 fire engines at the fire hall. Our newest one is a 2004 custom manufacturing. So next year that's going to be a 20-year-old truck. Our engine 2 is a 1993 Pierce. So we're hitting 30 years on that now. Both engines have, served us pretty well. The engine 1 that we currently, that's our main truck out of the fire hall that holds our fire gear along with our rescue equipment if we have a car crash, if we have other calls, gas, carbon monoxide, different things like that, all our air packs and stuff. It's considered a rescue pumper, so it's got bigger compartments, can hold quite a bit of equipment. With that being 20 years old, we're hitting the recommended time for it to be transitioned to a backup engine. Technically, the NFPA that sets the guidelines, and they are guidelines, standards, so we don't have to follow them, perfectly. But they recommend 25 years you replace a truck completely. Obviously, we're not gonna replace 2 trucks in the next 5 years. So engine 1 is gonna stick around quite a while as our backup truck, but we're, proposing replacing engine 2, our 93 Pierce. And that is a standard pumper body, so we do have limited space on that truck for rescue tools and things like that. So what we'd like to replace is basically engine 1, another rescue pumper. So we have a truck that can carry the extrication tools, a little bit of our ice rescue supply, ropes, cribbing for car accidents, all that type of gear that we need. Generally, that our primary engine goes on 90 to 95% of our calls. It's the first truck out of the garage. So with our engine 2 hitting that 30-year mark, we're really hoping we don't have to wait to the next borrowing cycle, because we'd be looking at 2 very old trucks very soon here. The length of time to order a fire truck, we've talked to 3 different manufacturers. Pierce out of the Fox Valley area, they're talking 37 to 41 months before we would get a truck. They also won't guarantee the price until about 14 months before the truck is delivered. So Pierce builds an excellent truck, but I just don't see where we could go that route, where order a truck today and then 3 to 4 years from now find out how much we're going to pay for it. When we started this process looking at trucks and talking to vendors almost 2 years ago. A truck that was 700, 750, they're now to over $1 million. So just in a couple of years, they've gone up and up and up. So we've gotten 3 proposals. We did get 2 of them today. Custom Fire, the manufacturer of our current engine 1, seems to be giving us the best options right now. If we order today, and I know Scott loves that answer, he was at $993,000. The issue with that is by the end of December, he doesn't believe he's going to be able to get it's a Cummins L9 engine. He's going to have to bump it to the next bigger engine, which a bigger engine with more torque, more horsepower is not going to be a problem for us, but it comes with about a $68,000 price increase. They put a bigger engine in the truck, they have to beef up the chassis and things like that. So it's not just the engine that grows. So if we were able to get the L9 engine, which I would be happy with, we were looking at $993,000. The most likely, if we order January, February, March like that, he put us around $1,061,000. So still under the 1.1, but you can see as time goes on, it grows and grows. But I understand that we have to wait until we have the money, so we can't just buy it based on that. I did get a proposal from Rosenbauer as well. Rosenbauer is out of backup Custom Fires out of Osceola, just north of Hudson. So relatively close compared to a lot of the other manufacturers around. Rosenbauer is out of Minnesota. They've got a plant just north of the Twin Cities. And they, worldwide, they're a big dealer of fire trucks. They were $1,117,000. So a little higher than Custom Fire. Rosenbauer and Custom both said roughly 24 months for delivery time, and when you sign a contract, that's what you pay. All 3 of them make good trucks. The Pierce, they absolutely make a good product, but we're kind of thinking that they're out just because of the lead time, almost 4 years, and can't tell us what the price is. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Do you guys have questions? Yes, sir, John.
What about all your gear that you have to go out to a fire with? How does that stack up? Because I know you need a lot of replacement and things there too. So It's not just the truck, is it?
We have a lot of needs. Air packs are probably our next biggest need. Al's been working on a grant for those, which is it's a federal grant. We haven't gotten it yet. I believe we're gonna try again next year, maybe go with a professional, grant writer. What were we, 150,000?
160,000.
We're about 160,000 on those. That would be our next biggest need, I would say. With, the air packs are a thing where our crew have to be able to use them in the dark, not be looking at them. They need to be able to know where the buttons are, how to turn them on, how to take them off. If we had to start buying 3 or 4 a year, now we're gonna have different packs. I'd be pretty concerned about that. So I do think that's our next biggest need for sure. Vehicle-wise, we do have 2 tankers or tenders. One is a 85, but I mean, that truck just has to drive and haul water. So I believe as long as that's able to go down the road, we're gonna try to push that one along. And then we do have a 2017 tanker as well. That was our most, before, other than the brush truck, our most recent purchase. So, otherwise, gear, we did get a grant for some hose and AED. One Al found extra stuff, so we're slowly replacing gear like that. I'd say the air packs would be our next biggest adventure.
We'll focus on the truck for now, because that's the thing.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Mark? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
This is not a time for public input, so I can't call on you right now.
Could I get an open floor to comment on budgetary considerations?
If someone wants to make a motion to open the floor at this time, could. But
Let's make a motion to open the floor and then hear what he has to say, then move on.
and is there a second to that motion? There is not. Motion fails. Sorry. Scott, go ahead.
You've heard the fire truck. I do want to address a question that came up regarding item number, the third priority, the West End Park Plan, and would the revenue generated from that plan pay for the financing? So the answer to that question is we did not include that to pay for the financing at this point. That is a possibility that could be done. Some of that could be allocated to pay financing as opposed to going to operations only. That's not a decision that would have to be made tonight, but that is provides us with some flexibility to make some adjustment if necessary. The other factor that will get us through next year's budget will be the closure of our tax incremental district number 2, which will provide some degree of tax relief, which we could offset with this borrowing, and then the additional revenue that would go to our operating budget, and that's how we're going to survive next year. So,
is that another one that we would be able to, if we chose to extend it a year,
No.
and use it for housing?
we already extended it. This is
That's the one.
That is the one.
Okay, same one. Got it. Okay. So are you looking for a general consensus on the ordering here?
I'm looking for a consensus on the priority listing, and now that we have some of that additional, if you're going with the fire truck, we have that information. I propose that the next council meeting, we invite the towns to come and discuss the fire truck in more detail.
At the council meeting?
Yes, because the contracts require that they have the opportunity to provide input before we make the final decision.
Need a motion for that?
Wouldn't need a motion, but I think you probably should have a tentative agreement anyway on your priority list. Because At the next meeting, what we'd probably do, because time is of the essence here, in order to get this done, because I want the money by the time the project starts in April. We would probably also have our financial advisors here to present the resolutions. We're gonna have to divide this into 3 categories: street, fire, parks, 3 separate resolutions for financing for the bonds to begin that process.
Next.
Yeah, I just wanted to make one comment on the codification line item here. That's been on for, I think, as long as I've been city attorney. And it's always something that it can get kicked down the road. I will say, though, that other municipalities that we represent, our firm represents, or I work with, it's about 50-50 whether they have the online codification where you can search and it's very easy to get through, or like Washburn where it's all in a book. Maybe we have some version of it online or whatnot, but a big concern I know with city staff is time and everything that they have to do. And I can say 100% having these updated codes online for residents to just Google, what can I do or what do I need to do here, saves a ton of cities' time, staff time. So right now, essentially, if anyone wants to do anything, they have to call City Hall or come in and ask, hey, can I do this? Whereas if it gets codified, it's just online, that eliminates a lot of that.
So, just a quick question, does the order, how much does the order matter?
That was gonna be my question. Thank you.
Because, all the tan are included in the proposed priority, correct?
Correct. So, and let me, a few caveats. If you wanted to add more and increase the tax rate next year, that's your prerogative. I was going under the assumption that you didn't want to do that. But I want to make sure, and there were a few variables too. I didn't know the exact price of this and the exact price of that. So I'm going with the best information. So if you're making any adjustments, and as we get through it, some of these other park projects, we're going to have to bid this out, and as time goes on, if we don't get to all this right away, costs may change and so forth. So just understand that once we get into all of this, there may be some adjustments down the line. That's where the prioritization list is helpful to me. Say, okay, do we have enough to do this, or we don't have enough to do that one? What's the next priority?
So the west, I'm guessing, I had to leave that meeting where we were talking about this, but I'm guessing the west end asphalt resurfacing wouldn't be a big deal to switch that out with the codification if it's determined at some point that would, so this is a general.
It was like, if we didn't have 50,000, but we have 15,
yeah,
we would do the 15.
Gotcha.
That's, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys.
Or 150 versus 50, yeah.
Yeah, or just throwing the numbers out there.
Sure.
We might not be able to do A, but we certainly have enough money to do B.
Okay.
But you wanted basically projects to go off of, given the money we may or may not have.
That is correct. And I say this very generically right now because we have a process to go through. Again, some of these items are not going to be in a bond, they're going to be in a note, so those will be easier. Those in a bond, we will have to have a bond counsel review everything. Particularly, I know they're going to have questions if the West End is included. I believe that will still, based on my initial discussions, that will still be tax exempt because we do not, for example, guarantee campsites in advance and things of that nature. We have a first come, first served basis. And if we do that, that still is eligible for tax exemption. So that has a significant impact on the interest rates because taxable bonds are going to have a much higher interest rates than non-taxable bonds. So
That's good to know. I think it's both. Tennis court resurfacing, would that be both?
No.
Yeah, I have a question on that.
That was,
So we can speak to that.
Tony, if I recall, that is for the
That's the
Hillside. So you're looking at doing the pickleball with separate funds potentially?
That was the cost of when we were doing the expansion at Hillside, which would include pickleball courts as well.
But I mean on the east side,
That's not included in that cost.
that would be a separately funded thing, another way potentially.
Yes, and that is being discussed at the Parks meeting on Wednesday.
Okay,
Yeah, we haven't discussed
so
it.
that's not a thing for borrowing necessarily.
We haven't spoken to the group, right? There's a group,
Correct.
there's a group coming that's proposing it. So, I mean, I'm happy about all the park stuff. I just was like, I had a big question mark with the West End resurfacing being, that was one of my questions too, that I guess that hasn't, and maybe I've just missed it, but that hasn't been on a list that I've been aware of, but maybe I've just missed it. Huh? It just kind of, so that one kind of came up from nowhere for me, $150,000 for that, and I guess I've just never really paid attention to that. Whatever, okay, so I questioned that one in terms of priority. And then the other, yeah, the 263,000, I mean, I know we were going for a grant for that, for like matching, so that's not taking into account the grant. I'm going to try to do the whole thing.
Yeah, is 263 that whole amount for that whole thing?
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's not just.
At that time.
It's also building a pickleball.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get at.
That included to resurfacing the current court at Hillside, building a new tennis court and a pickleball court up there. Putting in parking and putting it in the building.
It's basically, it's a basic.
For a fire truck.
That's so important. I guess that, yeah, that is, I mean, a big investment in Hillside, I guess.
That's
like
like number 9 on the list.
Yeah.
That's like a wish.
If I could address the grant issue, and Tony and I have discussed this for the tennis court. We believe that the likelihood of obtaining a grant for the tennis court is very small. So that's why we're not planning that.
Okay.
But that project could change and it could be less if we do less of that then.
That's kind of what I was going for. I mean, I don't think we really dug in from like a community perspective and like a need perspective of exactly like all that up there. You know, and I agree, if it's number 9, I guess that's my question is the priority and like kind of going for this whole thing and then, but it seems like if this is what you're gonna ask for, you have a plan that you would get this money and eventually kind of go through those projects, is that correct?
Correct. It's not to say that we have to do this project next year. We will have some time limit, probably within the next 2 to 3 years to complete these projects.
That was my next question, was the timeframe and how much we're fighting off to do with Bayfield Street stuff, and even the amount of work that's gonna go into the West End Park improvements.
So if we were
It's a
to,
lot, it's a lot going on.
if we were to decide not to do a project, could we just pay that money back then? Or would we look at other projects?
The bonds would have you would be able to repay that after a certain date. That's how we ask this to be structured. What that date is, I couldn't tell you, but we do have to account, yes, that in these resolutions that will have to be approved can be generic to the point where it's going to be for park improvements, listing pretty much everything on our list so that we'll have some flexibility. But you cannot deviate off and use bonded dollars for anything besides what you said you were going to, or you're going to get into some big trouble and they will never let you borrow money again.
So I see that sidewalks didn't make it onto the list. So we're gonna have to make that a separate challenge of some sort of looking for money for that. I'll get to work on another source, I guess.
Well, I mean, that's what it comes down to, I mean.
Oh, right.
I mean, I just, $263,000 for a tennis court resurfacing versus $263,000 to for new sidewalks, but that like opens a whole can of words of like, how we're gonna do that, but I don't know.
So is,
Did you guys talk about that in your finance, like sidewalks? Yeah, sidewalks.
Not really. It was too controversial.
well, we're waiting for our sidewalk inventory.
Who's that?
From Jerry.
Oh, Jerry.
He's waving at me back there.
Okay, I mean, I did think it's a good point.
To move that discussion along.
Okay.
Can we put and sidewalks in the bottom, just in case? No.
They have to be a separate.
Okay, so is everyone generally comfortable with the list and the order of the list, so we can have a consensus that looks fine?
But we're committing to borrowing everything we can. Correct.
If you want to make changes or prioritize something else, now is the time to do that, because at the next meeting, it's my intention to come back with resolutions to say, we are doing this.
This is it.
I think we need to be pretty inclusive on our list.
Well, I think as Scott worded it, it sounds like that would work well. Just list all of the park projects, although we have this internal document of the priorities.
We're gonna have to get into the detail of how, I'll have to discuss with them the detail that's acceptable and what's needed, so.
Yeah, I think my only concern is the capacity to pull, like, if you're gonna borrow this much to do, and I will say that I'm happy about the community-centric projects, because I think that's really important. The only, like I said, the only thing I question is, I guess, where's the necessity of $150,000 for the West End Park resurfacing? Is that from Jerry? Is that from you, Jerry?
Actually, and I put that on there.
Oh, okay.
Driven down.
Do tell, do tell.
Oh, yeah, don't go down there. Oh, it's bad.
I mean, this is the loops that go around all
Yeah,
West
I
End
actually
Park.
don't, I guess I just don't drive them. So we
So-
walk them with the parks committee, but I don't drive them. Oh, my God.
It is essentially at
It's
this point
treacherous.
just a bunch of asphalt patches holding together.
Okay,
So,
okay.
Number 10, the T-dock replacement, that's the dock West End Park.
That's
That's
gone.
the issue here.
correct.
And is that like a rolling dock, or is that a permanent?
No, that's supposed to be your roll in, roll
That's Tom comes to the Parks Committee all the time, and, I mean, that was one that we talked about doing with the Parks Designated Fund, for sure, and we were gonna bring that up, so that is,
Tom is the biggest advocate.
so that is something that could be done, but I don't know if taking 25,000.
Agree with putting that in, because we want to alleviate some of the issues that we talked about at the marina with kids fishing there, we did that. dock.
Give them a good place to go.
And so if we don't get a match from the DNR, for example, we could use the Parks Designated Fund to match that to get that project done. So there's some options. So I do think keeping it in there as a budgetary item is good, so that the whole amount wouldn't have to come out of the Parks Fund.
And a lot of the public is afraid of sending their young kids to fish out school dock. So,
So Jen, to your point though, you know, with personal finance in the past, Scott needs to and always wanted to stay within that carrying capacity of. So that is all of this, okay?
Yep.
All right, so I'm seeing a general consensus. Heads are nodding.
I like all these things.
We still love to do it.
yeah.
I think we can service it.
I guess that's the only part that's good.
I mean, it looks pretty good. I mean, Scott, you've done an amazing job at projecting out all of these different scenarios and details.
Well, I had help with those things.
Nice.
I've been working with our financial advisor to prep on this. We have the capacity, but we never want to get up too high on our capacity, and the goal has been to try to keep our the levy amount for the debt service stable, so we don't have a large tax increase or anything like that. We will certainly have some work to do in the future and any other things that come up to find ways to get things done. But these projects are eating up a significant chunk of that, so.
It feels for the first time in a long while, though, that it's community-based as opposed to need. We understand there's a need, there, but, you know how many years we kicked the windows down the road, and, you know, all the other things. So this just feels good. It feels better than usual. But we weren't in the borrowing time then either, so.
Right, but then after this, we're gonna be in that same situation again.
Again, but they'll be done.
We'll have like
Thanks.
Have new things.
New
cycle. There'll be cycles. Revenue being
It'd
generated.
be nice if it wasn't so like, everything.
road.
Yeah, well, I know, but the fact that we have to like, the whole thing of like having to do everything now and put it in here and not being able to space it over time. I'm just, that's what I don't.
You're feeling a little verklempt about that.
Yeah, I don't love that. I don't love to be pushed, like, we gotta do it now. We're not gonna do it for a long, long time.
It's true, though.
I know, but I guess it's true. I just wish, I'm not questioning things, Scott, I just wish it was different so that we could space things out over time. It wasn't so like hand to mouth, like we gotta do everything in the next 3 years and we're doing it this and then we have to live with that. I just.
It's a good plan.
It's a plan and it's a good plan, but I wish it was a little different. So we got a, on the table there, right?
We don't have a motion on this, it was just a discussion. So now, if we feel we've discussed it enough, we can move on.
Yep.
All right.
He's got the head nod, and that's what he wanted.
Yeah.
Okay, and getting us all up to speed, so I appreciate all the information and the detail. So thank you, Scott.
Next item is discussion and action on council committee per diem rates in tab 9 of your packet. This is an effort to even things out and again, catch up with the county. So people get paid the same on different committees. Does anyone have a motion on this?
Make a motion to accept this.
Motion by Tom,
Second.
second by Jared. Discussion.
I do feel like this just came up not too long ago, and we go into
It came up last year during the budget process, same request.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, I put it in again this year. The county had actually done another increase this past year, so.
They had 2 votes.
And just for clarification, is this similar to like Ashland City Council? I just curious, because there was something in the paper.
One in the paper was with Ashland County.
Ashland County.
Ashland County Board just voted to not give a raise for theirs.
Yeah, thank you for that.
You know what their current rate is?
Theirs is based on per day rather than per meeting in a maximum amount, because oftentimes they have several meetings in one day, and it's per hour, and it's a different structure.
Okay.
But it is not very high. I believe it's approximately $25 for 2 hours that you're there.
So 2009 is a long time, I guess, for us not to have made an adjustment. Jen, go ahead.
I have a question, and I should know this, but I don't, like, I don't even know what the Parks Committee, like, do the citizens that serve on that get, per diem for that, or do I need to pay? I don't even.
Yeah, can we review just who gets per diem?
So I have included who is currently getting per diem as the Plan Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, for a decade, the Housing Authority, and the Personnel and Finance Committee are the only committees that receive the per diem. Harbor Commission is prohibited by statute. They cannot receive a per diem. The Park Committee does not, the Library Board does not. What else do we have? Any of the ones that come up once a year do not.
On historicals rather than council.
Right, historic did not.
Yeah, I was just thinking of what other appointments were, just, I mean, I just know the Parks Committee and not so much, not really, but I just feel like citizens like that do, like the Planning Commission is once a month, right? It's on Thursday, people have to prep for it. Our Parks Committee is the same way. And I think that Parks Committee has put a ton of work in, they do extra hours and do management plans. I don't know if it needs to be changed, I'm just saying like, I feel like the citizens who like do like serve on that, spend a lot of their time, and it's no different than the Parks Committee, or than the Planning Commission, in terms of, well, I know it's a big, it's still time, it's still time.
Still time.
I mean, we have subcommittees that wrote a whole management plan for our walking trail. So I don't know, I'm not saying we need to change it, I'm just saying it's something to think about in the future, because it's people's time. People's time is people's time, and if you want people to serve on these committees and give time, I think a little bit of compensation is the best that you can do, you know?
Have we heard any complaints from anybody, or not complaints, but rumblings, or is this just something to keep up to?
I actually didn't even know people were getting paid. I didn't even know I didn't even know I was getting paid.
Do council members get paid when they go to committee meetings that aren't meetings?
No.
Okay, I don't get paid. So there you go. I mean, I don't care about leave per se, but I just like.
But the personal finance committee gets, I mean.
Yeah, so that's on the list.
And that's once a month. You know what I mean? I'm just saying, like.
Well,
no, it's more than.
Oh, no, it's more.
Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less.
It's sporadic.
It is sporadic.
So
Depends on
my
the time of
point
year.
is like a once a month meeting where you're expecting people to come, prep, do things, be on subcommittees and do work. I feel like putting some compensation into that is, if you want people to volunteer for your community, I don't know. I'm fine with leaving it as it is. I just want to bring up, because I don't think we really even talked about it when we formed a Parks Committee. We just said, oh, we need to form a Parks Committee.
Because they never did, historically, they never did.
Before.
Right.
Okay, yeah, I don't.
I mean, we did the study of the studies and those other things, we never paid for those either, so, yeah.
That you, we never.
we never got paid.
Things have changed.
So-
Things have changed.
But I think
do
it's
we have a
a good thing to
motion?
look at.
Yeah, but we're in discussion right now.
Sorry.
At County Housing Authority, how often do they meet?
Same as, that's a unique one, they're linked at the hip with the city housing, so they have like a joint meeting. Karen, who was the chair, could never explain that.
Is that once a month?
The committee meets, the commissioners meet once a month. Although, there are, like you've been discussing, other kinds of meetings that occur, you know, in between the regular commission meetings.
And you only get a per diem for the regular commission meetings?
Correct. But we operate as one body. And so there is a disconnect because those persons that are appointed by the county versus the persons that are appointed by the city of Washburn have different reimbursements. But we operate as one.
So is this not a place where I could recommend? It is a place where I could recommend.
So we have a motion to approve the per diem rates as proposed. Is there any other discussion or questions?
I just want to point out that it's not going to go into effect until after the next election. Just pointing that out, right, that's what you're.
It goes into effect for everyone's individual elections. So after the April elections, half of you, it will go into effect for. The other half, it will not go into effect until
next year,
the year after.
Okay, gotcha.
Or when your term is up on.
Yeah.
The committee, the citizen members would go into effect as of January 1.
So really what we're only missing here is the Harbor Commission, which can, and then the Parks Commission, Parks Committee. Is there any other committee that meets monthly that's not included?
The library board, but that's a goofy one too, because that would need to come out of the library budget and they have control over that. I think that would require some consultation with them.
I have a question for all those board members, our council members. Goes from 80 to 125 for us. Do we think we need that?
I don't even need to get paid.
Yeah, that's how I feel. I don't need this.
I do this, right. I mean, I personally would rather see if any adjustments here just go into the parks budget or, planting stuff on Main Street or something that, because I don't. Yeah.
I'd like to see them get something on parks. I really would.
I mean, whatever the
No,
amount is.
that's not on the agenda at the moment.
No, I know that, but
Yeah,
I'm just saying overall. Yeah, I'd be. in favor
So,
of that, so.
Well, that, he just said you could amend your motion to include the Parks Committee, that's what she's talking about.
You could make a change to
Yeah.
just getting the.
Oh.
Yeah, I think
Oh, I just asked that question.
Oh, sorry, I totally missed that.
the agenda's general enough that.
Okay, so then, let's go ahead and vote on this motion, which is to do both of these things. Okay, and then if that fails, we can make a new motion for something different.
Can somebody just amend their motion to include the Parks?
Oh, what would you like to amend your motion
To
to?
include the Parks Committee, or transfer to the Parks Committee,
But then what about the council per diem?
I think you're right, we should just.
I would rather just vote on it as is and redo it if it doesn't pass. So, right now, it's to do both of these things as written. All in favor? Opposed?
No.
Okay, motion fails. So, new motion, anyone?
I'll make a motion to maintain the current council per diem. Add Parks Committee payment and increase the other commissions from 25 to 75.
Okay, motion by Jared, second by Jen, to keep council at 80, add parks to the list of committees that receive a per diem, and make that amount increase from 25 to 75.
And add the Parks.
I had that right.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Good work. All right. No, you guys didn't take an increase.
Yeah, so we worked out paying yourselves.
Right, yeah. And thank you for all your work. Okay, next item, discussion and action on approval of 2024 water and sewer utility budgets. Tab 10 of your packet. We're so close. Okay.
I would make a motion of approval of the 2024 water and sewer utility budgets as presented.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mary, second by Tom. Scott?
I'd like to clarify for the record if that includes permission to do an inflationary application for the water utility if eligible, and the proposed sewer rate increase.
Accepted.
Is that it? That's okay with you to include that? Okay, so the motion does include what Scott just said. Which was the increase if eligible and application for that rate increase. If eligible.
The sewer, we don't need permission, so it would happen.
Any questions? Comments, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I think that's a good move, so we avoid a giant shock to the systems when we need to do it. Next item, discussion and action on ordinance 23-009, modifying ATV UTV regulations. Tab 11 of your packet. As you can see, there have been some adjustments? Because some of this was already in our ordinances in other places.
Yeah, so the last meeting, there was discussions about what everyone wanted to have covered in our ATV, UTV, snowmobile ordinances. And a brief review of the ordinances didn't show those. Then I went back through and did a review of all the state statutes that were incorporated or cross-referenced in the snowmobile ordinance section, and kind of identified here where most of these items were actually, some those being the speed limits, the helmets, and the exhaust and noise regulations. Those are incorporated already. So we didn't need, in my opinion on city ordinances, is to keep them as simple as possible. We don't need to put them in here explicitly, then let's not, because they're already available and the city police can already enforce them as is. Then the remaining question is revising the designated ATV, UTV routes, and what kind of three options, whether we want no change at all, whether we want to go some route of residential access, similar to what snowmobiles are, or authorizing all city streets. Those are kind of the options that were on the table here. Obviously, if you open all city streets to ATV, UTV routes, you wouldn't need, or there'd be no use for the residential access provision. I said it last meeting, and I did a bunch of research and confirmed my opinion on the ATV route residential access provision. There isn't anything in state statutes explicitly allowing it, but it's also a read guidance that says it's not exactly clear that it's prohibited. The answer there being, we can put it in our ordinances and tell people about it. If someone really wants to challenge it and push back, let's say they get a citation for going a street over from their house when it would have been faster for them to go the street down. There's a chance that if they challenge it and bring it to a trial, it gets determined that, no, we couldn't have this ordinance. The likelihood of that happening is essentially none. It always could happen, but for all, I think the purpose of doing this is to allow the city, to allow the police to talk to people and inform them, hey, no, this is the route that's authorized. This is where you should be going. If someone's off of that route and we have to go to trial to challenge it, there's likely other issues that would come up anyway.
In Ashland and Bayfield, and other surrounding communities, they have the designated routes also.
But not Bayfield, they don't allow ATVs in town.
Bayfield does not allow. Ashland, City of Ashland does not open all streets, but they do have they have more accessible routes than Washburn does currently. So almost every alley or street, almost every resident in Ashland has access from their house to a designated ATV route.
Are alleys covered in the ordinance?
They can be.
But they're not currently.
No.
It's just the routes that are on the map.
Correct. So Ashland has, I think what they do is essentially open almost every alley. Certain of them are not open for ATV, but most alleys are open.
I don't know, do you know why?
No.
I don't like the idea of alleys being open.
Mm-hmm. And then one thing that Ashland also
Our bedrooms
does.
are always in the back, it seems, on the alley. Not always, but, well. Like you're right on top of people driving right by you.
In looking at this issue, one thing that Ashland does that I don't think we want to do here is for the residential access routes, they require a person to come in City Hall and essentially register what their residential access route is going to be. So you can certify what your shortest route is to an ATV route. I did ask if that ever happens. No, it doesn't get registered, but it
People
just.
don't actually follow it, but it's there.
And that just creates another level of administrative burden to do that type of thing. So you did ask though to get kind of an overview of what municipalities are doing. That is in place in other ones.
So since we don't have explicit ability to do that,
can we do whatever we want then? Like, can we make it available to go get gas at the gas station? And, you know, like, can we open that up to more without opening up all the streets?
So the statute is the municipalities can enact an ordinance that is consistent with the state statute regarding ATV and UTV routes.
With snowmobile?
No, this is just ATV, UTV.
Oh.
So in those ordinances have the specific state safety standards in them. It doesn't have much, it says you can't have them on streets or highways that are over 35 miles per hour, or else on state highways. It doesn't say though that you cannot allow access to a grocery store or access to the gas station. So, and that's one of the guidance pieces that I highlighted to Scott in researching this from collegiate municipalities is that says this is definitely a gray area as to what you can and can't do.
Because for a long time, like County C, there was a big discretion, like, okay, you open the section from this road for people to get to the public. Oh, it's a state highway, so you can't, they have to go around here. I mean, there was a lot of, and then all of a sudden, sometimes they just actually opened up sections of C. So right
Because
now,
county could do that.
because the county actually ended up doing that, but for a long time, they felt like they couldn't. So it seems like it's a gray area, and it kind of,
And for sure, the city can open up any street or alley in the city.
Even if it is a county, if it's under 35 miles an hour.
No, so the county roads, county C can be opened in the city.
Right.
But
If it's
the
under
city
35.
cannot require the county to do that. So the county would have to sign off on that road being, the county C being an ATV road.
Okay.
Because that road is under the jurisdiction of the county.
Gotcha.
Currently. The city cannot, it isn't allowed for the state highway to be an ATV road.
I thought you said if it were under 35 miles an hour.
Not,
You don't
well,
have the jurisdiction.
not, and the city cannot do that. The Department of Transportation can request that it's a ATV route.
Okay.
The city can't designate the state highway as an ATV.
Okay, and we don't hopefully want that anyway.
County C, that's not a state highway.
No.
Yeah, so
That's
But
under
the,
county
the
jurisdiction.
county can designate that.
the section between 8th Avenue and Big Rock Road is in the city limit,
Yes.
roughly, and then,
And it's under 35 or no? No, it's 35.
no, that's 45
45.
up to, yeah.
But that the county,
So then
didn't that
county-
just get changed and it is allowed now, correct? I thought that's what we discussed
I
last
don't
meeting.
know if they voted that yet.
Oh,
Who sets the speed limit on County C? Do we do
The
that?
DOT does.
the DOT does that.
The DOT sets all the speed limits.
okay.
But don't they do that too, based on the closeness of the electrical poles to the highway, it slows the speed down? Is that correct?
But County C is not a state highway, so the
Correct.
DOT doesn't have jurisdiction there?
Yeah.
So who sets the speed limit on C? Not Highway
They don't
3.
have jurisdiction, but they still set the speed limit.
Yes, so the state statute set, say what the speed limit has to be, or it cannot exceed a certain level. I
So you can make it
don't
lower
know
than
for
that.
certain, 100% certain, but I think that the county could say if they wanted it lower than the state maximum speed limit, they could do that. But you can't exceed a certain level. Regarding the Mary's question about we can do whatever we want, I would say yes, we can designate whatever city streets and alleys we want as ATV routes. The problem with enforcement comes in is if our ordinance isn't exactly clear, it says this street, this street, and this street, and we go the route of closest residential access, then enforcement becomes very, very difficult because it's not a set road, a set route that's in place.
Right, but, I mean, that's what our snowmobile ordinance is.
Yes.
I mean, so I feel like that seems to be working. It's not like people are getting ticketed for
Going to get gas.
going to get gas.
Well, I think that's just law enforcement's just let them off.
Right. Because technically they shouldn't be,
But,
unless it's on a route.
but it's the shortest distance to get to the route.
And this is what we're voting on.
Right. Right, I'm just saying, he's saying, I thought Max just said that you're not recommending that.
No, I think it's fine.
Oh.
I just want everyone to be aware that if this becomes an issue and we get an issue, city police say it's becoming an issue with ATVs driving all over town, and we approve this ordinance approval isn't gonna probably deter people from driving all over town.
Right.
What it would do is give some guidance to the police to have these discussions with people and say, hey, look, this is where you should go.
Right.
Ultimately, if people continue to not listen to that guidance, this is one of those areas where it's a very difficult enforcement.
Or we just open them all up, and if it becomes an issue, then we can always change it later.
Yes.
That's definitely an option.
Okay, so I have a question with that. So, if you were to open up all the roads, does that also, okay, so for example, right now, it is not legal to ride your UTV to school, to take or to take it
Even
to.
though they do.
Not very much, not very much. I'm up at school every day. Every day I go to school. Every day I'm there for volleyball practice. There's not a bunch of ATVs and UTVs in the parking lot. Sorry.
My kids like ditch.
Well, I'm just telling you, I'm out there every day, so when you say I'd be surprised, I've been there for the past 3 months every day, and I don't see a bunch of ATVs and UTVs in the parking lot of the high school, okay? So if you're gonna open this up, the kids that have those could drive those to high school. Same thing with the grocery store. Right now, I don't go to the grocery store. I will say occasionally I'll see one, but not very often. So I just want to be cognitive that we're saying that that's okay, and that does change. Good, bad, or different. I always say it's not good or bad, it's just different. That will change, like some of, to me, like what you're telling me, right? And it could change like what we see, and it could make a pretty big. I feel like it could make a difference. And I just think, for me, I'm just not so sure that I'm ready to go there. That's just I'm just laying out there my feelings, because I understand, like, the noise thing doesn't get me, because I do know that there's motorcycles and I get that, but also, like, motorcycles, people are doing quite a bit of insurance on motorcycles. You have to go to the DMV, you have to get registered. I think for ATVs and UTVs, I think like having them a little bit more contained in our community, on our side streets and everything that's going on there. I just feel like I personally right now am more leaning towards the residential option. I'm just
I
gonna
would
put my
agree with you.
stuff on the table.
I think that if we go slow and see how this works, if it doesn't work, we can address it again. But I think opening it, the entire streets up to UTVs and ATVs is, to me, I mean, it's not gonna be a barrage of UTVs and ATVs, but I just think, like Mary, you brought up the whole issue of, oh, I wouldn't want to go in an alley, you know, like, I just think there would be a lot of different things going on.
I just know we've
that
had
create-
complaints from someone in the.
So,
I just think it's happening already, and it happens often enough that we don't even notice it. Really.
I notice it all the time because they're driving on the road in front of my house and it's not a route. But I'm not gonna call the police every time I see an ATV go by on the road. But it causes discussion in our household, I will say, because it's not legal. And I'm like, okay, well, anyway.
and I have to agree. Like, it's either like dispersing it and having it legal and then be ready for, you know, because I think right now people are kind of like, I mean, I'm going to use somebody in the audience, for example, like law-abiding citizens who know the rules are not going to be like, I'm going to take it to the grocery store, I'm going to take a parking spot. But if you change it and it's legal, I think that our law-abiding citizens are going to utilize it. And if that's the intent, then by all means, make the motion if you're comfortable with it. But just know that I believe that it will make a difference. And I think the fact of saying like, oh, it's
all streets.
Yeah, I think it will make a difference. And I'm not saying it's good or bad. I think it's different. And I feel like saying like it's happening already, so just let it happen. I believe that it will change to some extent because we have plenty of people in our community that do it and do whatever they want. Same thing in my house, lots of discussion. We sit in the hot tub at night, and my husband's like, is that one legal? Is that one legal? I'm like, I have no idea. So there is discussion. But if you do open it up, we have plenty of law-abiding citizens that then would be like, oh, thank you. And I'm going to utilize this, and I'm going to take my UTV, and I'm going to go and do this. And I'm not saying, I just, right now, I'm not so sure. I personally don't know what that looks like. I really don't. But I think it would be a difference. I think it'll be a difference.
Well, I think if people aren't doing it right now, and they hear that the ordinance is passed and they start doing it, they're already following the ordinance, so they're probably rule following people.
But the situation is, part of 4th Street, till you get to 5th Avenue, is not a road. They're up and down that all the time. Snowmobile's supposed to stop at every stop sign. They don't stop.
And ATVs.
But that doesn't change. Yes, they are.
Yeah.
And then the speed limit's 10 miles per hour. What we're discussing doesn't change that. So those issues, if the concern is that people aren't abiding by our current ordinances, what we're discussing isn't necessarily addressing that.
No.
Correct. The problem is the older people are complaining. I mean, they're in their late 70s, 80s.
At one time, we're running around on Harleys.
Like I said, I honestly don't know how much it would change, but I just think we have to think about like money and what that looks like and what your goals and objectives are from what you want to see in the community and what kind of vehicles you want to have on the streets. It just really comes down to that. I mean,
Well, I think it's a walking community. What would that look like for ATVs and walkers and dogs and bikers and, I don't know, I think going slow and changing it to help those people who have ATVs and live in the city access the shortest route would be the first step.
But it's just the closest route to the trail system, the trail and route system. And so you're limiting people being able to utilize their ATV to go to the gas station and the grocery store and to work.
So the residential access, residential access provision is to allow people to go directly from their house to the trails because currently if you're not on the route, you're supposed to put it in a trailer and drive it to the route and then get on the trail. That's the only change that the residential access allows.
but can you allow it to the shortest route to get gas and then get to the trail?
I think that if you want to do that, we just designate a certain route through town that goes by gas stations.
Because I do think it's silly that you have to that you can't go and fill up and get to a trail system. I get that. But then, so that opens up more routes. I'm just trying to think, because what we've heard too is it is silly to you don't want to have to go and trailer your vehicle. I mean, I do see some of that. It's just like you said, maybe there's some baby steps, there's some additional routes that we can open up. But then if you're gonna do that, you just open up all of them anyways.
Right. Because if you choose one route to get gas, what about the other gas stations that don't get the business? So then you open all the, how do you, yeah, it's a little.
And then the calculation of shortest route is dependent on someone's math skills.
So
right? And the law enforcement officer's math skills versus the driver's math skills and.
And that's why I said that provision is very difficult to enforce.
So I'm gonna rein us in a little bit, because we've had all this discussion without a motion on the table. So I would like someone, okay.
I'll make a motion to approve city ordinance number 23-09009, with the included optional replacement of ATV, UTV routes designated pursuant to Wisconsin statute 23.338B, all roadways under the jurisdiction of the city of Washington are designated as alternate vehicle routes.
And that's without the optional addition of the residential access then, correct?
Correct.
It's one or the other.
Yes.
Okay. And when it says roadways, that definitely says no alleyways.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion by Dave, second by Jared. to approve the ordinance 23-009 with the additions and deletions as listed here and the optional replacement of F with the ATV, UTV routes designating all roadways. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Any other questions?
That does not include the addition of residential access, right? So that just.
Correct. Okay. Seeing no other questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Motion carries.
Just for clarification here, in 22, we did do a new ordinance to combine the snowmobile and the ATV routes. So now this is undoing that ordinance.
Oh.
And essentially the only thing that's gonna change is just removing ATV routes from that ordinance. So then that ordinance will then just be labeled as snowmobile routes. Which I guess is gonna have to come back. No, I think that's a typographical error or amendment that you can just approve now to amend. In association with this, amend section 10-3-8 sub B, to only be snowmobile routes.
Separate motion?
Yes.
Who would care to make that motion?
Someone.
Second. Motion by Mary, second by Jared to amend ordinance 22-002 for what Max said.
So what's that saying then, that you're gonna allow snowmobiles to be?
So that's just.
Keeping the snowmobiles
out of
as is, removing
As is.
ATVs from the wording of that ordinance.
And I just, before we got into this, I forgot that we joined the definition of snowmobile and ATV route a couple years ago, now we're unjoining them.
But are the snowmobile routes on all streets as well?
No. Snowmobile has designated routes, but they have a
But maybe
residential
we'll
access.
talk about that in a future meeting.
Oh my God, I just have to say, it makes no sense that snowmobiles cannot be, if you just passed an ordinance to allow all UTV, ATVs on all streets and not allow snowmobiles to do the same.
I was under the impression
I think
that
it's-
snowmobiles were on.
For residential access, you have to go to the closest point from your house to the route. So that was different.
Right now, we have
Snowmobiles could have more
residential
access.
and these additional.
Yes.
So if we would have done the other one, they would have been something.
Exactly the same.
See, and I,
Okay, so with that, are we done yet?
You have a motion on, you
We
didn't vote on
We
this.
did.
No, not on the.
Sorry, thank you. So we have the motion by Mary, second by Jared, to amend ordinance 22-002 to remove ATVs from that ordinance. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm still close, because I did first two.
Can I make a request to change the snowmobile?
You can make that request to Mary or Scott to put on a future agenda.
Future agenda.
Yep. So I think we should. Unless Scott has.
Okay.
I just have a clarification here before, just so that I got this when it comes to publishing this thing and trying to educate people. So once this is all done, ATV, UTVs will be allowed on any city streets, but not alleys. That does not include C or Highway 13.
Correct.
Got it.
Thank you. We are adjourned.
We had a great meeting.
Ooh, I guess 8:30, it's almost 9.
Yeah, not often.
Oh, really?